What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, football.
It's here. Yeah, I mean, we've made it, right? I mean, I feel like that was about as good of a week 0 slate as I can remember. Maybe I'm being a little bit too, not slate, but just like the main game. I feel like those games often disappoint. But I felt like I was gonna just have a nice little hors d'oeuvre of college football. I was gonna watch a quarter and a half. FSU was gonna be up 20. I was gonna go do yard work. Instead, I was locked into my TV for 4 hours. So we're so back, dude.
It was great. It was the perfect kind of game to kick off the season. A little appetizer, just because when you have that dud first game, or the only game that you're looking forward to during week 0 is bad, you're kind of just like, well, this is really anticlimactic. This isn't the best start to college football season. And instead, we get a down to the wire game, a game that had just such a throwback feel to it with how few possessions there were. And we had, we're like doing stuff around the house and whatnot. I was like locked in for the first like hour, and then it's kind of one of those things where it's on, but like we're doing stuff. And then for the last like 45 minutes was when I was really like, I'm not getting up from the couch right now to be able to watch this. And it set up so perfectly for the person, which I think a lot of people are across college football, that was doing just that. And we got an absolute thriller. It took me until week 0 to get a take wrong for this upcoming season. Maybe Mike Norvell doesn't deserve as much blind faith as I gave him. So hand up, a little bit off the mark on that one.
You know what's crazy though? Okay, like maybe I just like Mike Norvell. I don't know, but it's actually pretty wild how much they were outplayed by Georgia Tech and how much Georgia Tech needed to do to win that game. Like, if you think about how they counted to 14 in that first half, they come down with the scripted plays. We've said it a billion times out here. Welcome to that, the rest of America. The scripted plays look great. They come down, they run that trick play, swing gate, get up 8 points. They then hit a 52 and a 59-yard field goal to get to 14 points. It's like the fact that, and that's kind of why I like Mike Norvell. This game made me kind of realize that it's like one player lost him this game, in my opinion, pretty clearly here. It was the quarterback position. But this was elements of how he beat Brian Kelly twice in a row, which is that, like, both of those games, I was like, wow, we're really just getting our clocks clean here, even though I feel like we're kind of outplaying them. And it's like the fact that they finished that halftime tied at 14, despite their just inability to throw a pass more than 3 yards, was actually kind of impressive. I'll be honest.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to sit here and defend DJ Uyunglele's performance. I will say probably the right side of that offensive line probably could have helped him out a little bit more. He had a better offense.
Give him a couple more years, he'll figure it out.
Yeah, just give year 7, year 8. He's probably going to figure it out at that point. The fact that his go-to guy down the stretch was former Alabama preseason star and then regular season participant Malik Benson.
Yeah,
I was like, when Florida State fans were saying that this is going to be the guy to replace like Keon Coleman, I'm like, look, I remember all the JUCO stuff about Malik Benson. Didn't see it line up last year, but yeah, the week 0 reality check for Florida State was it was real. I do hate, though, I will say, like the people retroactively saying like, oh, see, this means 2023 was a fraud. And I think that's more people say that just because they want to dunk on Cannell, which I'm not going to talk people out of dunking on Cannell. I'm not going to do that.
He came out with the Zapruder film about officiating. It's like, brother, I counted so many just like face masks that whatever, like just again, every play kind of went against Georgia Tech. That was bang like that, and they still won the game inexplicably. It's like, okay, man, I love it when a guy comes out with the Zapruder film. It's great.
Never change, DK. Never change. Absolutely.
Now that being said, if you guys would like to discuss the Patrick Peterson interception in 2009 against Alabama at length, my phone number is.
I would not like to discuss that at length. You know what I would like to discuss at length?
Just kidding, yeah.
Actual football that's being played this weekend. I am so excited. We got Marty Smith coming up in a little bit. We have Lad of the Week as well. Maybe going to circle back to some week 0 stuff with Lad of the Week if I had to take a guess. But we are breaking down every single Core 4 game involving an SEC team plus Lock of the Week. So that means we got 6 games to break down. That's the way that we do our preview pods for those that are new to the Saturday Down South podcast. First of all, thank you for joining us. We are in for a heck of a ride. Let's get into the first and most important game on the SEC slate. Just kidding. That would actually be if we're being if we're talking about this in terms of like time. There's games Thursday and Friday, but the game that people will be getting up to see is Georgia and Clemson in Atlanta. Georgia, number one in the country. You might have heard Clemson at 14. Georgia's a 13.5-point favorite as of this recording. By the way, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon, so that is earlier than we typically do the preview pods. We typically record these on Wednesday during the season, so there's a lot of injury stuff like that could be sorted out, things that we're going to hear about a little bit later on, including this one that is probably going to be of note on Saturday, not so much an injury, but a suspension. The over-under I have, Will, is 0.5 snaps played for Trevor Etienne. That's, look, in case you haven't seen, there's a lot of uncertainty about his status for Saturday after the DUI arrest that he had back in March. If he had been convicted of DUI, he wouldn't be playing in this per the Georgia bylaws. Yes, those do exist. Don't make a joke at that. But the waters kind of been muddied a bit because they had a plea agreement, basically dropped the DUI charge. He pleaded no contest to reckless driving, pleaded guilty to underage possession of alcohol, all that stuff. Kirby's keeping this close to the vest because that's usually what he does with suspensions. So this isn't necessarily new. We know what this game means to the Etienne family. Mm-hmm. I do wonder how much Kirby is factoring that in with this. And I also wonder how much Kirby is weighing the fact that Roderick Robinson is banged up. He's got a toe injury. He's not going to be playing in this one. Backfield depth is limited, which doesn't feel like something we often say with Georgia. I realize we were talking about this last year, but historically speaking, Georgia backfield depth is never really much of a concern. Could be a concern in this one. Without Etienne, without Roderick Robinson, if that's the case, that would mean Branson Robinson, the guy whose muscles look CGI, I think is fair to say. Missed all of last season.
Two of them? There's a Roderick Robinson and a
Branson Robinson and a Roderick Robinson.
Okay, got it.
Yes. Confusing, I realize. Very, very.
Because those both sound like superheroes. Like, it's not like there's like a Steve.
Yeah, it's like Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart. There's like three Shamars right now on the defensive line in the SEC. Yeah, it's very confusing to keep all this straight. But look, if this ends up being a Branson Robinson game, now I'm struggling. Look what you did.
That's your buddy, right?
Yeah, I know, anyway. Right? Yeah, my best friend Bronson. That's what I'm talking about. Look, Carson Beck mentioned this is someone who, yes, he missed last year, but the last time he was on the field for Georgia, had 2 touchdowns in that national championship game against TCU, albeit one that got out of hand in a hurry. But either way, I would expect that Branson Robinson is going to have a big role in this game, probably going to have a big role this season. Talked about before how don't think Trevor Etienne is going to be the SEC's leading rusher just because I don't think that's typically how Kirby uses his backs. And so they're going to try and dip into the well a little bit. Probably wouldn't be the best look to play Trevor Etienne after the offseason or two that's been for Kirby. I don't know. If I'm Kirby, I'm probably looking at it a little bit differently than he might end up looking at it. I don't know. But here's maybe the better question, Will. And this is why I brought this up. Does Georgia need Trevor Etienne to beat Clemson? Because I don't think they do. Like, let's be honest here.
Put Oscar Delp back there.
Seriously, put one of your tight ends back there just in pass pro and let Carson Beck throw it 40 times, and then give Dylan Bell carries. I don't care. Like
Dylan Bell. Yeah.
What was that?
That's my Southern football coach voice. He is like an all-time. I could imagine like Coach Nibble at Hoover yelling his name. Hey, get over here, Dylan Bell.
I was almost like Jeremy Pruitt Hoover.
Yep, exactly.
That was real thick. I like that. Like I think if Georgia came out with a really pass-heavy game plan and just decided, you know what, Branson Robinson, you got a lot of tread on those tires. We're going to get you involved. We're going to get freshman Nate Frazier. We're going to get the aforementioned Dylan Bell involved in here. I think they'd be just fine. Why do we think that at this point? Because why in the world would we have confidence that Clemson can score against Georgia? Seriously. I mean, last year was so bad offensively, and I was going back into the numbers today and realizing how many of these major categories that they weren't even top half in the country. I mean, it was terrible. Like, they couldn't get any chunk plays going. The Garrett Riley experiment, I think everybody agreed, like, didn't work out year one. But it would be blind faith to say Garrett Riley is going to all of a sudden flip the switch and it's going to be that much better. Yes, Cade Klubnik, full offseason in the offense. Like, I get these cliche things that we talk about, but this isn't going against Georgia Tech here, with all due respect to the 1-0 Yellow Jackets. This is going against Georgia, all right? This is going against the defense that's finished top 5 in the country each of the last 3 seasons with arguably the best defensive mind in the sport, Kirby Smart.
Mhm.
Speaking of that national title game a couple of years ago, and speaking of Garrett Riley, how did it work out last time he went up against Kirby? Because I there's a certain 65
Not
to
great. Chicken
7.
wings.
Yeah. And that was when he was at the peak of his powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that was when he was feeling it as TCU's offensive coordinator. I'm not saying we're expecting 65 to 7. Okay. Garrett Riley, probably better talent to be able to work with on the field with this Clemson team, as crazy as that sounds compared to that national runner up TCU team. Although they had some dudes. I mean, Kendra Miller, Quentin Johnson, like they had some dudes on that TCU team. Max Duggan, great college quarterback. But I am saying I expect something a whole lot closer to Georgia's 2022 opener against Oregon than I am the 2021 opener against Clemson. Okay, isn't it
Yeah.
wild to think about that change 3 years ago? That was the one of the probably the first game that we did as a preview game on this podcast together. And
Wow.
like I predicted Clemson to win that game. I went back and looked at my crystal ball, like my prediction for that game,
Mhm.
and I was like, I think DJ Uyunglele is going to get going. I think Justin
Well, he had a
Ross.
touchdown pass
Yes, he did.
in that
Technically,
game.
he had the only touchdown pass in that game. No other
Not to his own team, but he
Yeah.
scored. He threw a ball that was running to the end zone for a touchdown.
Gosh, Dabo even he was like kind of had a little bit of a shot at Justin Ross for not necessarily cutting off the route the way that he was supposed to. Like he said after the game that Ross was supposed to he was supposed to like break off the route, and
Mhm.
instead he just kept running a slant, and essentially that's why that play happened. And you kind of look back at that and you're like, is he just trying to look after DJ? Is he trying to like get his guy some confidence there? But yeah, a huge play in that game in a 10-3 game. That was the pivotal play. And who knows, like if that doesn't go Georgia's way, like I don't want to say it changes the entire trajectory of the 3 years that these programs have had, but man, like it's just so bizarre to see how opposite of directions they've gone. Clemson at the time, 6 consecutive playoff berths, 6 consecutive ACC championships. They're playing in the building where they win all those ACC championships. That place for Clemson was like what Atlanta is for Alabama, right? Like they own that place. And then to think that Georgia has that moment and runs away with that barn burner of a game. You know, Georgia obviously since then played in a couple of national championships, won a couple of national championships, and you know has more national championships in the last 3 years than Clemson has ACC titles. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. But yeah, the way that this game sets up is so different than what we were talking about 3 years ago, and Georgia, in my opinion, should be able to take advantage of all those weaknesses that Clemson's had. I think Georgia wins this going away. I don't think Clemson's pass catchers are all of a sudden going to flip the switch. So give me Georgia to win 38-10.
Yeah, the other day we were texting, and I, of course, texted you because I was seeing slander online. I'm not going to go to the publication, but it was one of these tired old takes of, well, the best 2 coaches in the sport are Dabo and Kirby. Obviously,
I like Chris Vanini. The exercise that he chose to do with tiers, I hated his justification for it. We can call out people if they have wrong opinions. Like that's okay.
Fine.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I agree with you 100%.
Yes. And so he trotted out the take, well, these guys have multiple national champions. They got to be the best 2 coaches in the sport. And here's the deal, man. If you're not cracking 30 in the ACC, you're just not going to be able to hang with any top 10 coach in America. Like if you're struggling with Mario Cristobal, that's just not going to happen. And basically, let me tell you why. The great defensive coaches, a la Nick Saban, I feel like I can. It's going to be the times I can mention Nick Saban productively are just going to go down, right? But Kirby has taken that mantle for him where it's like, okay, yeah, I guess you hired Mike Bobo, but you still had an electric offense. You still had this multifaceted offense that was getting up and down the field. And when Kirby was winning national championships, they had a really nice, unique offense that powered them to that 65-7 mark that you were talking about in a title game, right? Where they're eating chicken wings on the sidelines. And I think that the style of just being – doing the Les Miles, doing the, the old school, like Mark Richt of okay, we're just going to get all these athletes together. We're going to not turn the ball over. We're going to play defense. It just does not work anymore. And I think that that puts Dabo at such a disadvantage because when you don't have this great generational quarterback, right? Like your Trevor Lawrence who can make things happen, make these NFL throws at the college level and hit these tight windows. You just can't hang with these elite teams who are going to have those athletes on defense and they're going to have a great offense. There is no offense optional anymore. Being defense optional is honestly better, and we were always, coached up and thought, okay, you got to have defense. You got to have defense. But I would rather have, last year's LSU team or a Lincoln Riley team that can at least go shot for shot with a team and make it interesting than have a team that's just kind of dead in the water the way that Clemson has been, because you see it with football. We just talked about one play completely changed that game with the pick six. I mean, you're sitting on one or two plays completely making or breaking your team, when the other side of the equation is, we just had a guy fall down defense. All right, Jaden Daniels, get back out there and score another touchdown. And that's just so much easier to get over. So yeah, I think that I hate to say the game is as passed Dabo by, because we love the Riley hire and we did at the time. Maybe it just is breaking those bad habits. But I mean, that was the thing that I even cautioned people about at the time, was that TCU offense was not pretty. It was not the Lincoln Riley offense, which I think people will just we got Eli Manning, he must be Peyton Manning. No, completely different. And it's like, this offense doesn't look like his brother's offense, Garrett Riley and Lincoln Riley. It's a hard hat offense that gets the job done, but it's not the one that's going to be wowing the recruits in the way that it had in the past. So yeah, I think that really puts them at a disadvantage, which is the craziest part of this too. To echo your point, is that we're looking here and going, Georgia with Mike Bobo is just eons ahead of Clemson and Dabo Swinney on offense.
Think about this, Will. Clemson and Dabo has maintained, for some, tier 1 status. Because why? Well, because he develops, and his floor is so unbelievably high. Dabo in the last 3 years has had 2 offensive players drafted, none of which were in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. One offensive lineman was a 5th rounder in 2023, and Will Shipley, a 4th-round running back that, if we're being 100% honest, did Will Shipley turn into the player that Clemson fans hoped he'd be in a post-Travis Etienne era? No. He didn't. And how much of that was the scheme? How much of that was the surroundings? Clemson not being able to find those guys that can stretch the field? I don't know. But he did not turn out to be that guy. And it's wild to think that they have gotten to this place. And we can see all of the reasons why they have gotten to this place. And I think you're going to look at the way that these two teams are built, and there will be moments on Saturday in which Georgia has a big play in the passing game. You'll be like, oh, who's that? Oh, it's Dom Lovett. Oh, that's over there. That's the tight end that got from Stanford. Oh, wait, is that London Humphreys, the guy that got from Vandy? Oh, yeah. All of these guys that Georgia got from the portal.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirby, between the first 3 cycles of the portal, between 1 and 4 guys, he was so much closer to Dabo than Lane with the portal. It's not even funny.
Oh, yeah.
He was the guy that said, we're going to still recruit at the high school level. We're not going to rely on the portal. Very, very seldom are we going to go after that guy. And they were always going to be, at a loss for that. And Kirby took 11 guys from the portal in this class. And now, in the first year that you're without Brock Bowers, that you're without Ladd McConkey, you already had Robert Thomas kicked off the team. And obviously there are things that Georgia needs to figure out. So I'm not saying that this is a given, because there could be those moments this year in which they just don't have that guy that Carson Beck trusts when it's late game scenario and he needs to be able to move the chains. But they have set themselves up so much better than Clemson has to overcome the loss of legends. And it's like such a basic thing that we can probably talk about until we're blue in the face, but it's what allows you to keep this floor high. And Georgia's floor, if it's a 13-1 season, is just so much better than what we could have ever imagined 3 years ago when these teams were playing. It doesn't feel like it's a fair fight in this one. And it's going to be noteworthy if Clemson makes this a 60-minute game against Georgia.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crazy too when you think about these teams' path to being kind of a dynasty, right? Where it's like with Dabo, it's like, dude, you will never have another challenger in the ACC. I mean, like, what Mike Norvell has done to come up just a little bit, you know what I'm saying, has completely knocked this guy off his rocker. Meanwhile, in the SEC, you got Texas, you got Oklahoma, you have the resurgence. We talk about Mizzou and Ole Miss ad nauseum. You got Brian Kelly at LSU. You got all these guys coming in and making the SEC better. And we're looking at Georgia going, and who should they be scared of? Texas? Heck no. Brian Kelly? Heck no. And with Dabo, it's like, man, we always joke about the weather needs to be perfect, 72 degrees. Like, that's what it's feeling like more and more for Dabo. And at ACC, it's like, okay, you guys added like half of SMU and some West Coast schools. Like, how are you not in control of this conference for the foreseeable future?
So let's do this then, because you're right. All those points are very fair, and I think everybody kind of realizes it. Even Clemson fans, whether they want to realize it or not, who might be holding on to this notion that Tyler from Spartanburg sparked a new era of Clemson football. TBD on that. Dad was no longer taking calls on his.
I was about to say, that's all you need to know is that he didn't want to take any more calls. He didn't want to hear what Tyler has to say.
Tyler's the walk-off.
Tyler was right.
Yeah, it was. So here's what we should do. Let's say that Clemson pulls off this upset, because that's what it would be. You're a 2-touchdown underdog. If Clemson pulls off the upset, all right, we're going to have different conversations about Clemson. Probably having different conversations about Georgia. But if that doesn't happen, and if this is the status quo, and if Georgia wins this game going away, and it's not particularly close, let's just please stop putting Dabo in tier 1. Can we stop? Because you can say someone's the most accomplished coach, but when they're 6 years removed from winning a national championship and they're just trying to win a New Year's Six Bowl for the first time in 4 years, why do we have these conversations? Why, like, what's the point of that exercise then? And I think Chris Vanini does phenomenal work, so I'm not trying to like call him out. I just didn't like that thinking, because I actually we were talking about this. Once you get into tier 2 with these coaches and stuff, it is very all over the place right now, and it feels like it's going to go in a bunch of different directions with the 12-team playoff. So I get the struggle with that, but Dabo's tier 2. Like Dabo's tier 2, Kirby's tier 1, and like that's, for me, that's about as black and white as it gets. And I usually try and find the nuance in these situations, but not with this one.
Yes, and I didn't even do a prediction. I think you're right on the money. I'd go 30-10, but I think 38 is probably more likely, honestly. But I still want to steal your answer. That sounds perfect.
Fair. All right, let's talk about the other game of the week. Virginia Tech, 13.5-point favorite against Vandy. Speaking of games with a 13.5-point spread, the over-under is 12 times in which I wish that Chiron Drones would change his name. And I confirm this. I know, sigh. I confirmed this Monday with our ACC guy, Brett Friedlander. Unfortunately, Virginia Tech's quarterback is Chiron Drones, not Chiron Drones, which is terrible. I mean, missed opportunity this is. Brett actually suggested when I was talking to him, he's like, Virginia Tech should just take a page out of the Notre Dame playbook. You know, it was Joe Theismann, and they changed his name to Joe Theismann for the Heisman campaign. Chiron Drones, that guy's a dark horse Heisman candidate. Chiron Drones, that guy's got an up and down season ahead. He's going to have his moments where it's really fun. Chiron Drones, that's like straight out of Central Casting for a college football movie. Like, sign me up. That guy is
up there
great.
with Juwan Pass at Louisville. I was really rooting for that guy.
I know. And then, ironically enough, what could he not do is throw the football. That's tough. But I think Vandy should change its mascot. That's my newest take. If I could ask about Vandy on radio, they should be the Vandy Aggies, not the A&M Aggies, the New Mexico State Aggies. Hand up, I knew this was a thing, but not to the degree that it actually is.
Okay.
I did not process the extent that Clark Lee went to, basically just watching what New Mexico State did at Auburn last year, and deciding that he needed to poach the entire New Mexico State program to try and save his job. That's what he did. Okay. He admitted he watched Diego Pavia beat Auburn like 9 to 10 times. He admitted that at SEC Media Days. But it's not just Pavia that he brought with him from New Mexico State. Lee also poached backup quarterback Blaise Berlowitz, tight end, former A&M quarterback Eli Stowers, running back Jamani Jones, other running back Michaelan Young, offensive coordinator Tim Beck, different Tim Beck, not the same Tim Beck. Don't go there. And just in case that wasn't enough, New Mexico State head coach Jerry Kill is now a consultant at Vandy. Clark Lee said, all right, you think I'm not going to the portal enough? I'm going to portal an entire freaking program and bring it to Nashville, and that's going to save my job. It's unbelievable. I mean, I have never seen anything quite like this, where it's one thing if, like you're a new coach, you bring in players from your previous program. Everybody's talking about all the things that, like Jed Fish did, bringing Arizona players to Washington. He tried to get Fafita and T-Mac up there and stuff like that. And, the Washington guys like Kalen DeBoer brought over to Alabama. But to say, I like that program, I'm just going to get all of them, and that's going to be my solution, is a wild move. It truly is. And I salute him for it, because you got to think outside of the box to win at Vandy. And if we're talking about Vandy winning multiple SEC games this year as a result of poaching the entire New Mexico State program, give Clark Lee another extension. I'm just saying.
I mean, I just don't understand. Like, guys, Matt House figured out that offense last year. Like the Auburn offense was not good. Like it was like the Vandy offense scored 22.8 points a game and the Auburn offense scored 26 points a game. Like why if you're going to go take over an entire program, why not just aim a little bit higher at that point? Like why
No,
not
no,
just
he took the offense. He didn't take anything from the New Mexico State defense. He wasn't impressed with that. Clark Lee is taking control of the defense. No more defensive coordinator. He said,
right, I got you.
give
I'm
me your
just saying
offense.
that like Auburn didn't lose that game because of that. They lost that game because they couldn't score.
They
Like
couldn't get a stop late too. Like,
I guess I'm just saying, like in terms of like teams that are stoppable, I feel like Auburn was right there with Vandy last year because like that's the thing you have to like we were just talking about. You have to play a little bit of complementary football, and I think that it was later in the season by the time they played New Mexico State, and they had more of an entrenched starter, but it's like that's such a weird line in the sand to draw where it's like I don't know, like go for a bigger upset, like go. I don't know. Go steal someone from Iowa's defense or something like at that point. But it's
good
like,
luck.
yeah,
It's a lot easier to poach New Mexico State than it is Iowa.
I guess, but I don't know. That's just such a funny thing. It's like, guys, we have the secret. These guys beat Auburn. It's like, yeah, they kind of so did everybody else. Like, not being a jerk, but it's like, I don't know. I think that's such a weird. Like, good. This is a very Clark Lee move. Some of these worked. Some of these worked in the year we had 2 wins in the SEC. Whenever you don't win and you do stuff like this, you look like a goober, though.
I'm sure you know somebody like this. My mother-in-law is like this. If
Okay.
she goes to a store and sees something that she likes, she will see something that she likes on the mannequin and say, I want the entire outfit from
Yes.
head to toe. Give me that.
Yeah.
Clark Lee did that with New Mexico State football. He saw the entire New Mexico State mannequin and said, give me that.
Sure.
That's the key to my success. He's like, don't overthink this, Clark. Don't just take, I'm going to take just the quarterback or just the offensive coordinator. No, you like the cut of their jib and you want them to be a part of your program. Go make it happen. And he did.
I love cut of their jib. That's a great phrase. I'm glad you said that.
Having said that, I think Virginia Tech wins this one 31-14. They're 4th in the country in percentage of returning production. Chiron. No, you know what? Screw it. We're calling him Chiron Drones. I don't care. I'll admit that I'm saying his name incorrectly. We need to get on board with that. Chiron Drones is going to ball out.
Chiron drones, 2 dang phones. Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, this is like a battle of 2 teams that are trying desperately to be part of the South. So I love this. You know, we could give them an honorary Southerner membership here between Vandy and VT, because it feels like both of them are trying. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I feel like this is going to be fun if you're a Virginia Tech fan. I think that's a program that we grew up watching. It was really proud back in the day, and it feels like they've kind of lost their way. But what a way to start your season. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I can't wait to see. Okay, here's the question for you. Clark Lee has had all off season to prepare for this game. What are the wrinkles you think? Do you think we're going to try a trick play, or do you think he's like too business for that?
Whatever New Mexico State wants, it gets. Let those Aggies run everything.
Write a check.
Let the third most famous Tim Beck call whatever's in his arsenal.
Yeah, sure, man. No, good point. It's not up to him. It's above him. It's an Aggie decision now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm taking Tech for the reasons covered.
There you go. All right. Number 19, Miami, 2.5-point favorite against Florida. This game in the swamp. The over-under I have is 91 degrees for game time temp.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the slight under, but heat index will be much higher. Again, that's all that matters. It's the humidity, not just the heat. I'd say get ready
for those dad reps in early and often.
Yeah, seriously. I probably need to get a shirt that says that that fits the brand very, very well. It does. We're going to get that 5:00 shower because that's just what happens in the state of Florida. So Florida fans, like you already know, there's a lightning delay that's coming in this one. That's just the way that we live life this time of year in the Sunshine State. I looked up the last time that Florida opened the season at home with a non-night game, because this is going to feel weird. And it already feels weird talking about it this way. Usually there's a little bit more sense that's put into this. And it's not just as simple as what's the best ESPN, ABC TV lineup that we can set up. Let's actually factor in what fans would want to see. It's all about the TV viewing experience now. We've talked about that. But the last time this happened, where Florida starts off the season at home, non-night game, 2013 against Toledo. So pre-playoff era. Florida was a preseason top 10 team and went 4-8. It was a must-champ special in every single way. Easy. Heal well. Heal. Um, they actually won the opener by 3 scores and then dropped 2 spots in the AP poll ahead of their week 2 matchup against Miami, who beat
Mm-hmm.
Florida, even though the Gators had a 413 to 212 total yards advantage. Shout out Dan Mullen.
Mm-hmm.
But when you commit 10 penalties, turn the football over not once, not two. When you turn the football over 5 times, these things happen and you lose games that you probably shouldn't lose. Why do I bring that up? That is the last time that Miami beat Florida. I was at their only matchup since then, 2019 week 0 game, another game that was entertaining, not as entertaining probably as Georgia Tech, Florida State in terms of like down to the wire, but it was entertaining nonetheless. Here's something wild. This will be their 5th matchup in the last 20 years. 2004, 2008, 2013, 2019, and now 2024. Every time these two teams have played in the last 20 years, both teams have had new coaches, like different coaches from the previous matchup. So I'm not saying first year coaches. I'm saying like 2004. Think about it. It's like very different. 2008, move up, new coaches again. 2000, like every single time they are facing off, it's like, oh yeah, Miami's coach is facing Florida's coach for the very first time. Weird. Speaks to the instability that both programs have had at times throughout the 21st century, at least at the head coaching spots. They play again next year, that game in Coral Gables. What are the chances that both have new coaches again?
One of them will for sure. We just don't exactly know which one.
This game could have a huge say in that. Probably will.
Exactly.
Probably going to be very important. This game is my clapback to anyone who says the regular season doesn't matter anymore in the 12-team playoff era. Huge game.
Have you ever met anyone from Florida, if that's the case? Because they are fired up about this one.
Very, very fired up. And I think that there will be a whole lot of takes going around on both sides. And that's kind of the beauty. Those are the games that I love. When we get to overreact to both sides, that's when you know you're watching a game that's carrying some significance.
And FSU has already lost. So whoever wins this game can delude themselves factually into thinking they're the best team in Florida.
How about Florida and Miami fans both kind of dunking on FSU on Saturday? It's like they're coming off a 13-0 start to last year. I mean, it's
ancient history.
Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I think Billy needs this game slightly more than Mario does. That might be obvious, but as devastating as it would be after an offseason of hype for Miami, in a weird way, maybe it's kind of what they need to maybe get the spotlight off of them and then just creep into contention in a very winnable ACC. I mean, part of the reason the Miami hype is there is because the schedule feels like it sets up really well. That Miami roster might not be at its best in the opener. I don't think it will be at its best. A lot of new pieces, the scorching temps. I think Florida plays desperate. I really do. In a game that would be devastating for Florida to lose because of obviously the looming latter half of the schedule, I think Florida's defense makes life difficult on Cam Ward. Maybe those are famous last words, and I'm going to come away from this with even more respect for Cam Ward because I do love him as a player and think that he'll have a really solid year. But I think Florida's issues on that side of the ball defensively have been more about depth down the stretch than being able to show up and play a game in August. It hasn't really been, are they ready for the start of the season? Because I think the last 2 seasons, you've probably felt good if you were a Florida fan about, oh man, this is going to be the equation that solves our defensive woes. And we got things figured out. And obviously things down the stretch have just not worked out. I think we see Austin Armstrong like headbutting dudes coming off the sidelines because he's so fired up. And the broadcast crew is praising the addition of Ron Roberts, even though Billy's answer to the defensive issues that he's had was hiring a guy that's been fired at each of his last 2 jobs in the last 2 seasons and hired him because of his relationship at Louisiana. But that's a different subject for a different time. And we'll go there if we need to go there. Nonetheless, Toby Keith win for Billy Napier.
I placed one of the most confusing friendly wagers in my life, and I think you'll be even more shocked by it knowing me. So Cam Ward is the runaway preseason All-ACC Player of the Year. And my couple of buddies that are Miami fans, I bet them that Graham Mertz would have a better season than him.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
I don't know why we keep waking up. I've said this on here before and pretending like we fell out of a coconut tree when it comes to the Miami Hurricanes.
Yep.
Um, I don't know why we think that suddenly everything is going to change and the cat is going to bark here. Maybe the cat will bark here. And if the cat barks, oh my gosh, what an interesting thing. Let's talk about it. The cat's now barking. Every time Miami has dealt with any type of hyper expectation over the course of pretty much my life, outside of the 2020 season, which we've just admitted did not matter, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, what was his name? Wilson on the Jets. Just all of it was made up. That was the only time Miami was kind of good outside of when they hired Mark Richt explicably and were kind of good for a year.
Did you just call Garrett Wilson a fraud?
I'm not Garrett Wilson. What's his name? The quarterback from BYU.
Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Never mind.
There are two Wilsons on the Jets. The quarterback. Yeah. Zach.
Well,
I've tried to.
Zach Wilson's not on the Jets anymore. So my brain.
Yeah, but they tried, didn't they? Anyway, so point being, they did. The good Wilson is still there. But point being, just quarterback play was rough that year. Was kind of my point. And everybody was good, so that doesn't really count. And then again, that was just a weird year for Miami in 2017. Outside of that, there's not been a year that Miami has even performed near preseason hope or expectations. Just call it expectations, not hope, because the fans are always above expectations. And I just don't think this is the year, in a year that Miami's not even predicted to do well, that Cam Ward comes in and just does something that, Herbert couldn't under Mario Cristobal and plays above expectations. I think that we've given, this team and this specific head coach chances to do many things. And one of them was kneel the football, and he couldn't do that. I feel like we, on the other side of this, Billy Napier loves a good press win, loves a good PR win, loves a good preseason or like early season win. We always talk about, his win against Utah, where for 24 hours or probably about a week was oh no, this guy's going to be really good at Florida. And then the rest of his Florida tenure happened, thankfully. But these starts to the year, he is a motivator. One thing about Billy Napier, he is a motivator. When you get these type of guys and they're ready, the week one games, we saw that under Coach O too. Guys just get guys ready to run through a brick wall. And I think that Mario Cristobal is the exact opposite of that. I think he is a guy that is, we call the CEO, but kind of I'm not going to get into that. But point being, I think that this game is exactly poised for a Florida "How do you like me now" win. You nailed that, and a Miami we're still Miami performance. And that's the thing. They have the talent. I think their offensive line is going to be better. That's the thing. I'm sitting here trying to rationalize this bet that I made with my buddies. I'm like, none of this makes sense. I want to sit here and tell you Florida's offensive line is worse. They have lost their only receiver he has trusted for the last, that has been trusted that program since Billy got there. None of this makes sense. But at the same time, Graham Mertz was inexplicably good last year, despite the horrors. And in terms of being a top 5 or so SEC quarterback, I think he was that. And point being, Cam Ward is a guy that if he had his druthers would have gone to the draft. You know what I'm saying? In the last minute, backed out, went to Miami. But it's not this is a guy that is I am a Hurricane through and through, even, the way that Derek King was. So, yeah, I just think this fit is going to be very Miami. It's going to be very money over, fit and the substance I don't think is going to be there. And maybe if this coaching staff of why do these people keep hiring Cajuns, Connor? What is going on? The whole Florida thing and Miami is just full of Cajuns. They got former LSU players on the Miami staff losing out on DJ Pickett. This is weird. Anyway, I hope that I predict that Florida's Cajuns come out on top. They could go for their little part of Louisiana that these teams are now fighting over. But point being, I do genuinely think that this is going to start the year off on a good foot. Now, where the second foot goes, we've known this doesn't predict anything, as we saw in the Utah win for Florida. But yeah, I don't think this is going to get put on a hype video to horrible Creed music. But I just don't know who's scared of Miami anymore. I just don't know what about Miami I should
Creed
be
music. Horrible. What Creed music is horrible?
Well, no, but a 480 highlight that's been docked down in quality, when Festus Ezeli retired and he had anyway. So that was the reference 3 people got. But anyway, so I don't know who's scared of Miami anymore, and I think that Florida at least has some things their quarterback position that's just better. I'm sorry.
I think you need to apologize for saying horrible Creed music exists. I'm offended.
You're right. This would be more like a 10 years type thing.
Yeah, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but if their opinion's wrong, we need to call it out.
No, you're right.
Look. I think people like Cam Ward. I think people like the Cam Ward story. I think the stuff with him going to the NFL, the NIL stuff, was a little bit weird and all that. But you kind of go back into his roots of playing in a wing T offense in high school. The only offer he's getting is Incarnate Word. He ends up playing in a superstar offense and gets this opportunity at Washington State. And in this era of college football, where we can actually have access to watching these guys, and we're not just like, well, that quarterback went 5-7 last year, he must not be a winner. I think there is a little bit more of an understanding that Cam Ward has a lot of really redeemable qualities as a player. And I think that has fueled a lot of this Miami love. I think that's a big part of this. But again, I think it's difficult to go into a place like that and to be able to pull off a victory, even at a program that has struggled on that side of the ball. So yeah, I'm there with you. That is an interesting take about Mertz having a better year than Cam Ward. What would you consider to be a better year overall? Because Ward isn't like, he's not going to light it up from a rushing standpoint. Mertz isn't going to light it up necessarily, but like, are we talking quarterback rating? Are we talking like?
So I said yards, touchdowns, quarterback rating. I said, look, I mean,
total yards.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Van Dyke actually would have won this bet last year, and that's the thing. That's my only thing. I like Brad Kaya. I like Tyler Van Dyke. These guys went from quarterbacks that I really had a lot of promise to Miami fans telling me they were horrible over and over and over again. And I'm like, I like Cam Ward. I really do. I think he's going to be a good player. I think Miami is where quarterbacks go to die. I think that's it. I mean, what was the last good quarterback that played at Miami?
Ja'Cory Harris had a moment. He had a minute.
Oh boy, we can talk about the Ja'Cory Harris Heisman campaign, but that's how it always goes, right? It's like it gets built up and then it just implodes at the worst possible time.
I remember seeing Brad Kaya came to, was that 2014 at Nebraska? I think it was. And I covered that game and I was like, Brad Kaya is Jesus Christ. That guy is the truth. He is awesome. A little bit of a tougher time living up to that. Might have been Apex Mountain for him that year. 2015, I guess he had a cup of coffee as well. Another nice performance against Nebraska the following season. But yeah, the way that it is just always falling apart. Like Derek King was the guy that was built for this modern era of football. And I remember the Ross Dellinger story about him and all these NIL opportunities that Miami was taking advantage of with him. And he was this guy that was going to be built to finally play in this modern offense that they were going to run. And they've had moments offensively, but for whatever reason, they just haven't found that guy quarterback. Maybe Cam Ward is, maybe this is the launching point. I still think Florida wins. All right, Saturday night. This one's going to be awesome. I think this might be the game that I'm looking forward to most. I really am. Number 7 Notre Dame is on the road. Number 20 Texas A&M. A&M is the 3-point favorite.
Oh my gosh, the Brian Kelly Suns Bowl. Look at this.
How about that? The over-under I have is 3 times that you see someone reference A&M, quote, pulling off the upset. Don't be that person. Don't be that person. I say that because this is set up perfectly for many people to make that mistake. Notre Dame is the higher ranked team, but A&M is the favorite according to the odds makers. In this setting, you defer to the odds makers. Okay, that's if you're talking about favorite and underdog, don't make that mistake. A&M winning would not be an upset, but honestly, like I don't even like Notre Dame winning as an upset because that feels weird too. So let's just not use those terms for this game. Let's just accept that this is a game in which I think either team has a path to be able to come out on top. But I've got an unpopular opinion about this matchup, and I'm going to get pushback on this. I'm very, very well aware of that. We talked a month and a half ago about how the Big 12 is America's conference, and I had Kansas as America's team. You had Ole Miss as America's team, but that's for this season as a whole, right? For this week, Texas A&M should be America's team.
Oh, man.
Unless you are a future Notre Dame opponent, you need to be rooting for the Aggies here. Even you, as an LSU fan, need to be rooting for A&M in this game. Even Texas should be rooting for A&M to win this football game, and here's why. I think we have this belief that the 12-team playoff is now going to be super inclusive and that everyone is in contention. And to a certain extent, that's true. We've got 7 at-large berths that are up for grabs after the auto bids go to the highest ranked conference champs. That's the way that this is going to work. But think about this. The loser of the SEC and Big Ten championship games, those might as well be auto bids, right? So now you're down to 5 auto bids, or 5 at-large bids, I should say. 5 at-large bids. If Notre Dame is 11-1 and doesn't play for a conference title, I got news for y'all. Notre Dame's getting into the 12-team playoff. And now we're down to 4 at-large bids. The at-large bids, which is the only thing that Notre Dame can get, They're not getting one of those auto bids. They're not, oh, hey, they're going to find a way. It's not like, a Big 12 champ or something like that where, okay, well, that's got to go to somebody. No, Notre Dame is going to be more of a bid stealer than they were before. And the at-large bids could basically be cut in half without really giving it much thought. And if you looked at that Notre Dame schedule, Will, you'll realize that 11-1 feels inevitable with that Miami cancellation, which is Miami's fault, not Notre Dame's fault. So I know Notre Dame's going to get dragged. It's going to be like, Notre Dame doesn't play anybody. Miami overbooked non-conference play. Blame it on Miami.
It's the most Miami storyline. They just didn't check their planner.
Yeah,
oh no, we got you.
Sometimes you
move this
overbook.
meeting the next year, bro.
You overbook, you underbook. I have it happen all the time. Like, oh yeah, hey, I can't make that call at 1 o'clock because I've got a 1:15 or something like that. I'm like, oh no, it's actually Thursday, not Wednesday. It happens. It's the best of us, just not usually with college football non-conference scheduling. But Will, this is a schedule that is just like begging for 11-1. And I say that as someone who isn't saying that Notre Dame is going to compete for a national championship. They're the team that's got 3 wins against AP top 5 teams in the last 25 years. All right. After A&M, Notre Dame's next game against a team in the preseason AP top 25 is at home in November against 0-1 Florida State. Yeah. After that, only other preseason AP top 25 team on Notre Dame's schedule is USC. That's it. Everyone needs to be rooting against the Irish because they might be able to sleepwalk to 11-1. And if you're saying, Connor, what are you talking about? Doesn't that mean that A&M will just have a path to the playoff? Isn't that what we're talking about here? Right? Well, you just let out a laugh that I was like,
do you see Walter back there?
I do
He's
not.
Like trying to break into this room. It's hilarious. It's fine. His little paw just shot up from under the door and he's trying to open the door. Continue.
I love that. I'm always like, do I open the door for my pet? Do I have to? What's the downside? They just sit out there. They just can't get into the room that they aspire to get into. Life will be okay. They have an entire house to get to. But anyway, the way that right now people are probably looking at A&M is, okay, well, they're in the top 25 already. If they win this game, then all of a sudden we're talking about them for the 12-team playoff, right? They have a much tougher path to get to 9 regular season wins, which is something that they've only done twice in the 21st century. Only 2 times has A&M won 9 regular season games in the 21st century. They also still need to win a true road game for the first time since October 16th, 2021. Okay? A&M's path to the playoff is a lot more difficult than Notre Dame's. But at home, if they can pull off this victory, not an upset, this victory, monumental, it would be for A&M. It really would. And I think A&M's going to have a lead late in this one. I really do. I think Connor Wigman's going to make some plays that make me say, you know what? I love me some Connor Wigman. I really do. He's going to be fun to watch this year in this Colin Klein offense. But I think the A&M defensive line, after looking really, really good for the majority of this game, just can't quite put it together late. And I think Kyle Field will be rocking. Mike Elko is minutes away from avenging last year's Notre Dame loss with game day at Duke for the first time ever. And just like last year, his defense can't quite get the stop that it needs late. He puts together, Riley Leonard, that is, puts together consecutive scoring drives, touchdown pass, maybe to Clemson transfer Bo Collins in the final 2 minutes. Notre Dame wins this game, thrilling, down to the wire, fun game that lives up to the billing opening weekend. America's week 1 team comes up just short.
Yeah, I'm right there with you just in terms of Notre Dame is just, the coaches can change, the schemes can change, but we all end up in the same place, which is how do you guys keep getting away with this, with these schedules? And it just goes to show that they should just never join a conference. Because at the end of the day, NBC, we just saw the Olympics, we see Sunday Night Football and what a great product that is. They're gonna have money pretty much forever. It
$60
feels.
million. Why would? Yeah. Why? There's no.
Why would you ever do that? If you can be Garrett, oh no, I don't get to win my conference. Okay, you also don't have to play for a conference championship. So at the end of the day, it's I think this works out perfectly for them. I think the similarities and contrast between these two teams is going to be fascinating, right? And I joke about the Brian Kelly Bowl, but there really is something to that, right? These are 2 former Brian Kelly defensive coordinators, so you're going to see. Defensive alignments are going to be kind of similar. I'm not going to go into the fronts, although I bet Marcus Freeman wishes he did against Ohio State. Didn't know if he was going in 3 or 4 down. Anyway, so point being, the thing that's the most interesting about these two teams in a comparison, right, outside of, year 1 for A&M, typical year 1 storylines is, the offenses, right? Whereas Notre Dame has gone back into the Brian Kelly well and gotten like Denbrock, who has just come off of coaching a Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels. But the thing about Mike Denbrock is, and you saw the offense last year, it is a little bit more, I hesitate to call it an antiquated offense, but it's kind of like Bobo in a way, right? Where it's like you started off as this very antiquated offense, but then you improved it to be a little bit more modern, but it's still not exactly what A&M has, which is truly, this young hotshot and Colin Klein, a guy who we're not going to talk about his age because I can feel my hair falling out as I say it.
Don't do that. Yeah, we don't need to. No, he's an age at some point. Yeah,
he's an age, right? And so, point being, we have two of these, former defensive coordinators who are at different points, right? You have, okay, we are going to go get the young hot shot. We are going to do things kind of our way from A&M, whereas Notre Dame is bringing in stability, right? They already tried, this with what's his name, the Bama OC from last year,
Tommy Rees.
Duh. I started to make a joke about him earlier. So many names today, but yeah, like they already tried that with Tommy Rees, right? Initially, and didn't go great. We saw the loss to Marshall. We saw all of that stuff early in Marcus Freeman's tenure. Well, now they're trying to bring back kind of the established voice of the room and blend these two eras of Notre Dame football with Denbrock and Marcus Freeman. Well, with A&M, they're like, what if the young guy just works? How about that? What if we just don't hire the one young guy who is traumatized by Brian Kelly and wants to run a 1980s offense so he doesn't get yelled at? And so, point being, like, I think it's kind of funny that at Notre Dame they're replacing, this like old, like younger old school guy. And obviously there was a gap year there. It wasn't 1-to-1, but remember these guys were coaches together under Brian Kelly, so it was kind of hard to get out of that mold. Now the first kind of mold breaking hire was to go back into that tree for Notre Dame, and so we've seen. The transfer quarterbacks in Notre Dame do really well. Hartman, last year, Riley this year. A&M obviously has like their guy. And so I think while these two teams will look similar, right? I feel like there's going to be a little bit of it's going to be like these are both of that mold of size, right? Strong teams that really are going to try to prioritize strength and conditioning. Now, again, A&M, how much does that prioritize under Jimbo Fisher? How much do you really have control of that locker room when you have Denver Harris doing whatever he was doing and everything? So they are order. That is something that this whole beat of the drum has been under this big coaching tree is order. It's about blocking and tackling. It's about minimizing mistakes. And so I really am fascinated by the contrast between these teams because you are going to see two teams that are structured pretty similarly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I think that they have been built by a couple of defensive-minded guys.
Yep.
Who don't mind winning 24-21.
Exactly.
And that is, kind of a dying breed in this sport, at least at the top of college football and what it's become. I do think that both hiring the offensive coordinators that they hired this offseason suggests we're going to need some offensive firepower.
Yeah.
We're going to need some help because if we don't do those things, I think that we're going to limit our ceiling. And I credit both coaches for doing that because I think that's a tough thing to do at times. Like I just think that defensive-minded coaches, I always go back to the example with Muschamp. I'm like, do you ever want to score? Like, do you know that you can get to 28 points? Like,
yeah,
you realize that it's not going to hurt you if you have a quarterback throw the football 25 times in a game.
It's got like a dog shot collar on every time. He's number two, no.
Right? But like, I think some of these guys are just wired that way. And it's tough to kind of break out of it. And they are going to be two fascinating hires. Maybe the two best offensive coordinator hires that we had in college football this offseason. And I think that it's going to be a great battle up front. I think if Notre Dame can handle the pressure that Elko's going to throw at them with that defensive line, something I feel like I've been talking about forever with Scorton and Turner. If those guys are neutralized with a couple of new tackles that Notre Dame has in a post-Joe Alt world, that's such a great sign from Notre Dame. I don't know that happens, but I think my takeaway from this will be A&M's going to be able to hang with anybody. They're going to be able to hang with anybody on that schedule the way that it sets up because of the fact that they get all these headliner home games. And their easier games in theory are on the road. And they're going to be that type of team this year. But I think my takeaway will be Riley Leonard's got this kind of figured out. And credit him coming off of injury with all these moving pieces in that atmosphere, knowing the potential mismatch that's going to be staring him in the face with that pressure rushing off the edge, speeding up his decision-making process. That's going to be such a difficult thing to manage in that venue. And I will give him his flowers if he does that. That will be really impressive. And I think that's why A&M is a slight favorite.
Yeah, and I'll say too, man, one thing that is legitimately fascinating to me is like I wish in college football you could sort by quarterback carries the way you can in the NFL because like
Yeah,
sacks are like counted as carries. I would love to know how many carries Jaden Daniels had in that offense because I want to see what this offense looks like when your quarterback's not averaging 9.3 yards a carry.
SEC
Um,
StatCat does a good job of tracking that as
okay.
well, and I think that like the quarterback design runs, he usually does a really good job of like separating that, and you can eliminate. Or I
Hmm.
think there's like certain settings. I don't know if PFF does this, that or if they do. I don't know. I'm out of season with my PFF stuff, but the like you can treat it like the NFL. Like there's a way that you can change
Hmm.
stats to be able to do that, where NFL doesn't obviously take away from rushing yards if a guy gets sacked. So there's probably ways that you can figure that out.
Yeah, I'm super duper just interested by that, right? Because Riley Leonard is a good to great quarterback, right? But just seeing like the parallels between this game is so fascinating. More, I think about Riley Leonard, who was with Elko at Duke, right?
Yeah,
Like these two sides probably know each other
they
more
should.
than any two coaches have ever known each other. Like this is actually crazy. So that's kind of where I'm going there. It's like, okay, well, this is a dream matchup for Elko because at the end of the day, he knows this defense, he knows this quarterback, right? And like I said, I'm just so fascinated to see. Okay, like there were not a ton of runs called for Jaden Daniels. Sure, that was by design. But like I said, when your quarterback's not averaging 9.3 yards a carry on when plays don't your first and second, like imagine you got Malik Neighbors and BTJ, and if neither of those guys are open, then you can take off. That feels like a cheat code, right? So at the end of the day, if you have to get down to that third and fourth read in that offense, if your receivers are not two first rounders, how does that offense really look without a guy who is just the easy eraser, easy button from Staples? So yeah, I'm fascinated to see what if you isolate the Denbrock component, put him with a good to great quarterback, and not something that we've kind of never seen before. And then yeah, I think that seeing that defensively, knowing how smart Riley Leonard is, and the fact that they were together at Duke, and the fact that they've seen these defenses together, I'm going to be like locked into this game, man. The more I think about it, every play is going to be such a chess match between Denbrock, Denbrock plus Leonard versus Elko, or like just going back and forth and back and forth. And Klein is the only guy who's like, I don't.
Yeah,
Where'd y'all come from? You guys, I missed the family picture.
yeah.
But yeah, point being, and you got to respect the coach for going outside that tree too, because you need other voices in the room. So yeah, I do think that it wouldn't be shocking to me at all if A&M won this game. And to your point, like you're talking about these guys, A&M, like it's like, oh yeah, A&M lost like the flashy fast guys that I've talked about. Those lines are still going to be pretty good, man. Like Notre Dame is going to have two of the best lines in the country. I'm not taking away from them, but this is not going to be like this will be one of the harder teams, maybe the hardest team on Notre Dame's schedule to push around just because of the talent they have and the coaching they received.
Yeah, the offensive line for Notre Dame, the further removed, it's like I talk about with the Clemson defense. The further removed you get from the Brian Kelly era offensive line, does it
Mm-hmm.
start to fall off at any point?
Yeah.
Do you kind of see like, oh, Joe Alt's like a Brian Kelly recruited guy, like
Yep.
those types of dudes that just became a staple at Notre Dame, and it's something that they were known for during their best years in the 2010s. Like, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. Can't wait for this one Saturday night, college game day in College Station for the first time in 6 years. Should be a lot of fun. All
Mm-hmm.
right, the game that you will be at Sunday night, number 23 USC against number 13 LSU. LSU's a 4-point favorite for this one in Vegas. The over/under I was gonna do a joke related to pregame adult beverages for you. I decided not to. You know what? Let's do it. Over/under 5.5 pregame drinks for a certain Will Ogburn.
Man, my schedule for this trip is going to be so funny. I heard from Peyton officially yesterday that he's getting it at like 9:30 or 10 on Saturday night, which is just chaos. Like I don't know what we got an Airbnb for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and he's I guess getting it at like 9:30, 10 on Saturday. And so and Sunday. So like we're only gonna hang out for Sunday. So I told him like, dude, pick a brunch place because that's kind of like all we're gonna get. So I think we're gonna be pretty well, got the lather going. It's going to be kind of hot out there. Now that being said, this game is going to kick off a little bit earlier because it is on West Coast time, so it won't be like the whole waiting around thing we're used to be doing all day. But yeah, I'm really excited about this game, man. The more stuff that's come out, the fact that they're going to that 12 personnel with the two tight ends. I was telling you about that. Going back to more of the big guys Brian Kelly likes, seeing Lincoln Riley, and my guy Zachariah Branch, seeing all like the way that these two coaches are kind of positioned. I'm so fascinated by this game the closer it gets.
I asked Will about how many pregame drinks he's going to have, and he turns it into an answer about 12 personnel.
I'm so excited, bro. This is the most disorganized I've been in one of these because I'm like, oh my God, the week is here. Let's go.
Football junkie through and through. Yeah. By the way, I'll be solo on the Sunday pod. Will's like, oh, I'll try and watch all the games Saturday and stuff like that. Will,
we looked at each other. We were like, let's plan for success here, right?
Let's come on. What are we doing here?
Let's be real here. Right?
You're going to Vegas. You're watching a team. Like I can handle it. Your boy will be just fine solo on Sundays. That'll be the plan. We'll have our recap pod come out before this game, so we're not going to preview this game again, but we'll have more takeaways from this with our midweek pod that we do next week. The actual over/under I had was 4 Miller Moss completions of 20 yards.
Miller Moss.
That's a good Southern name. I don't know where's Miller Moss from. Why do I
That's
always?
a great question.
Gosh, I feel like I know this. Oh man, I wanted to say Oklahoma, but that didn't really line up.
Santa Monica.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, because he didn't start off with Lincoln Riley, obviously. LSU allowed an average of 4 20-yard passes per game last year. Not good. 121st out of 133 FBS teams with 51 20-yard pass plays allowed. Bad. Basura in every single way. I want to see if Blake Baker can turn that around because that's the thing with this LSU defense that has been a constant in the 2020s. Think about this. In the 4 seasons of the 2020s, LSU has not ranked among the top 90 in FBS in 20-yard pass plays allowed. That's bad. That's real bad. That's chunk plays that you're letting up. Yeah. For DBU, nonetheless, to have that, not great. 3 different DCs are to blame for that, so you can't even just blame it all on Matt House. And probably not great that LSU is also just trying to finish top 50 in yards per play allowed for the first time in the 2020s. We already know LSU hasn't won a season opener in the 2020s. I feel like I bring that up whenever I need to knock you down a peg and you're getting a little bit too confident. LSU signed a big-time recruit, or LSU got a verbal commitment from this recruit. Remember how, isn't it weird, Will, that LSU hasn't won a season opener?
It's, what's crazy about, too, I don't know if I've talked about this, but Les Miles had this real specific stat that he was good at, which was regular season non-conference wins. He set the NCAA record for regular season non-conference wins. So not a bowl game, I don't think he even coached the playoff era, but it was every time LSU played a West Virginia, an Oregon, a TCU, they would go so far outside themselves. Virginia Tech, Les Miles would bring the boom on these random teams, and it would be this is SEC football right here. We would be fired up, beating the mess out of them. And now it's kind of starting with that implosion against Wisconsin, if you remember that.
Oh, yeah.
LSU's not been good in these games since then.
Yeah, that was my wedding weekend. I remember watching that game. Watched that game in shout out Knicks in Bloomington. Watched the game that night and was like, wow, can't believe Wisconsin's actually going to win this football game. But you could see all the ways in which LSU's historic defensive issues, 2020's defensive issues could resurface in a matchup like this against Lincoln Riley, who, by the way, has top 8 scoring offenses in each of his 7 seasons as a head coach. Yeah. Sage Ryan banged up. Make what you will.
Oh no, Sage Ryan's not playing. Oh, you better pack it in now, brother.
Zay Alexander still maybe working his way back. That might be a little bit.
I would like to have on the bus, please. Play
him you want in full pads, definitely. New defensive scheme for LSU, obviously. Could be some moving parts for this LSU defense. Whatever. Can't be worse than last year, at least one would think. I hope for Blake Baker's sake, he just lets Harold Perkins rush the passer on USC's first 8 passes of the game. Do that, because last year, that man played 35 snaps against the pass in the season opener, and he only rushed the passer 7 times. That's what Matt House had 8 months to prepare for. Probably didn't exactly set the wheels in motion for a Matt House extension. It instead, of course, set the wheels in motion for the entire defensive staff to get gutted. That can't happen again. It just can't. Allow 52 points. Let Harold Perkins rush the passer 15 times, okay? Yep. Make sure that you do that above all else. Really, as a whole, obviously, LSU getting kicked in the face in an opener, that's what can't happen again. Because if it happens again, that's 3 for Brian Kelly. It might not just be an LSU thing, although we would all be talking about the 5 in a row in season openers. I don't think that happens again. Because for all I keep talking about with this LSU defense and how you could see a world in which, oh my God, there's Sage Ryan chasing Zachariah Branch into the end zone. That's not ideal. You don't even have to close your eyes and picture it. That's just the little squiggly line you see in your eye. That's just the image of this happening in this football game. Even if this is not necessarily an LSU offense that looks exactly like it did last year, I think we're still going to see Garrett Nussmeier have a lot of success. Garrett
Yeah.
Nussmeier having success against a Lincoln Riley coach defense. Imagine that. Even if Chris Hinton doesn't play, banged up, it looks like. I think the takeaway is that LSU has an offense that's still plenty capable of putting up big points, and that USC's defense is still plenty capable of allowing big points. Breaking news. Even though I really did like the Danton Lynn hire and think that he could have some long-term success, he's going to be better than Alex Grinch. I'm hedging a touch because I'm going to say that USC is going to cover, but I'll go with LSU winning a thrilling 38-35 game in the game that Lincoln Riley wanted to get out of.
Yeah, I so imagine this, right? I was explaining I felt like Jonah Hill and Moneyball explaining Lincoln Riley to John the other day because John's just like not a big football guy. And I'm like, all right, this is Lincoln Riley. He's coached like all these Heisman Trophy candidates. He's won the Big 12. He is Oklahoma's career win percentage leader. There's just one problem. He's best friends with Alex Grinch. And it's like the funniest thing ever because it's like, how has this guy not been more successful? And I like went through every bowl game. It's like I started with the Georgia game, really looked like this was like the two coaches that were be on top of the sport for a minute, and then the last couple of like lost to Tulane, you know. So it's like it's very interesting to see kind of which version of this team is going to show up. I do think whatever Lincoln Riley is worth as a college football coach, we're going to see it this season, right? Because we've just had two, honestly, pretty disappointing seasons with Caleb Williams, given how great of a talent he was in a situation where his talent was never questioned. It was never about Caleb Williams. It was pretty much all about the defense, all about Lincoln Riley and all the distractions. So I think that this might be an addition by subtraction situation with Caleb Williams for Lincoln Riley, where it's like, well, now I really got to focus on my fundamentals because I don't have a magician playing quarterback. I can't just line up my buddy to go play, Coach DC and go play linebacker or whatever. I think that Nussmeier is going to be such a fascinating player to watch. I love him. Going back to the tight ends thing for a second, seeing some of the practice film of him, this is a guy who's going to have some turnovers, and it's funny.
He will,
there's like practice footage of him throwing balls that look like my first week of playing NCAA, where I didn't have the throwing mechanics down. It was just throwing it right to a DB. So I think that goes hand in hand with why these tight ends are coming in. But at the same time, these tight ends are horrifying. And I said this from the beginning, talking about we need to get these tight ends involved. Looks like that's what's come out. Very, very excited about that. Again, I've said it ad nauseum. The fast receivers designed to get downfield, the huge tight ends designed to eat space and set the edges on the run game. I think the running back stable is going to be super interesting to monitor in this game. And I think at the end of the day, like, these are two teams that want to be more smash mouth, for lack of a better word. I think that last week and over the course of his career, Lincoln Riley has been painted as a guy who is pretty finesse, for the nicest way I could say that. And I think that Brian Kelly never, ever. We just talked about two of his defensive coordinators being two of the greatest defensive minds in the sport and having these big physical teams that are going to punch you in the mouth. He never, ever, ever thought he would be here. And so I think both of these guys' reputations are kind of on the line. They're on softness watch, which is never where you want to be as a college football coach. I do think and again, I've said this over and over again, I love Blake Baker as a hire. I love these coaches they hired because of what happened last year, right? Talking about the Deuce Chestnut interception in this game, talking about Denver Harris, talking about the gambles they made in the portal to fill some of these holes that Brian Kelly had to go fill. I think he's building the old school way now, when it comes to the defense, because he saw that those didn't pay off last year. And for that reason, combined with a new scheme, I think these DBs are going to be an adventure. I really do. I honestly am kind of glad Sage Ryan, might not play, because these younger guys are really showing something. But the guys that have been there forever, to me, all you know how to do is lose, right? Because you have this bad data, these bad coaches that are not really your fault. I was joking the other day, like, what if Sage Ryan had just gone to Alabama? He would probably just be in the NFL now. He would be hidden by that scheme. Someone would have been sold the dream of Sage Ryan, the 5-star. He would have gone the second or third round, already gotten paid by now, and he would have been exposed in the NFL, just like Mark Barron. See you later, right? You've already got the money, run to the bank. So I applaud him for staying at LSU as long as he has, for sure. But at the same time, I think, we're going to see these younger, hungrier guys on defense for LSU. Now, that being said, if we're going to send Harold Perkins, that coverage has to be good. I don't think there's been enough time to get that coverage down. So I would say this game is going to be a little bit more higher scoring. I'm going to go like a 42-39 or 38 win for USC, because of week one. I think if this was week 4, I think LSU wins this going away. But I think that, you got to adjust the defense, but this team has just feels like been together for longer, where when you got an entire coaching staff the way that LSU did last year, when you lose your offensive coordinator and replace him with a co-OC, when you lose your entire defensive staff and upgrade at every position, you got guys from over here who are saying, here's the best advice I ever got as a coach. Here's the best advice I ever got as a coach. I'm coming from Texas. I'm coming from Mizzou. I'm coming from, over here. So, yeah, I just think that's how humans work, man. I think that, at the end of the day, yeah, you send Harold Perkins. Yeah, he creates some mismatches and create some havoc, and I would love to see that. But that coverage right now, especially with Zy Alexander banged up, is not good enough to take those chances one-on-one. And I think that the Lincoln Riley offense has shown that against an undisciplined defense. That's the thing. The defenses that have exposed Lincoln Riley have all been disciplined. Alabama, Georgia defenses that are out there to kill you, and they have pushed them around. I don't think LSU right now is the Jimmies and Joes to do that on the back end of the defense. But, yeah, I think up front, LSU has much of a chance. I think they can score easily on this team. But we have about one more game of the 2023 era to live through, because this is just a nightmare matchup week one for a new defense.
It is. And for anyone that's ever called Will an LSU homer, let the record show he's predicting USC to win this game.
I got a bet on Graham Mertz. What else do you want from me?
There we go. Is there, because we're both on the record saying we don't think LSU is going to make the 12-team playoff. Mm-hmm. Is there a result that could play out in this game that would make you, I don't want to say do a full 180 and overreact and say, oh my God, LSU is destined to make the playoff. But if LSU wins this game 20-10, something like that, defense balls out. Blake Baker looks like the Messiah. Harold Perkins is 2022 version of himself. Does that, as an LSU fan, make you think, 10-2? Is that on the table? Or is that more so just they exposed a work in progress, an offense that, while historically has been great under Lincoln Riley, obviously, is still trying to fit a lot of new pieces in?
I think that's a great question. I think at the end of the day, someone like Zachariah Branch really presents an interesting opportunity, because the whole at LSU's, to me, the biggest issue, I talked about defensive talent, right? But it really just is man coverage. It is the ability to play cat defense and say, hey, we got whoever the star LSU corner is that we're used to having. I'm going to go erase that guy. And Branch, who is so shifty, so fast, all-purpose preseason, we talked about that. This is the type of guy that Lincoln Riley can use a Swiss Army knife. So even if there were that, Patrick Peterson, we would need a Tyrann Mathieu who could move around the field and shadow this guy all game. So I think that that's the thing, right? It's going to be solo man coverage specifically. If these guys can hold up in one-on-one man coverage, that will show me something. Are these guys, what scares me a little bit is the composite talent rankings, right? Are these guys better? Are they 5-star heart guys, right? Are they going to show up and play like they're higher than the recruiter ranking? Maybe. Okay, maybe they're going to be all on the same page, but that's the thing that worries me is the back end of the defense. So if these guys are great at communication, if we don't have blown assignments, and if man coverage looks good, I'm going to be fired up, because I love, how the offense looks. I love how the linebacker core looks. D-line could use a little bit of work here and there, but the corners and the safeties are really the issue here. At preseason, all SEC second teamer Major Burns, how's he going to show up? What if he just shows up and plays like all SEC this year? That would be electric.
National championship, if that's the case.
Yeah, if Major Burns plays like prime Jamal Adams, we might be onto something here.
Shout out all the 5-star hearts, by the way. Just slid that right in there. We always need a good 5-star hearts reference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I love the composite. When you've talked about it, they got to adjust that formula because of portal rankings. Because sometimes guys are overlooked and stuff. But like when you really take the emotion out of it and go, how many of these guys would be LSU's first choice 4 or 5 years ago? Not a lot. Now we're getting those guys. We're getting the DJ Pickett's, right? We're getting the guys that are going to be that next generation of DBU. So get your licks in now. But they just got to get that turned over. And some of them are in the building, but they're just young.
Yeah, it's true. That's perfectly fair. Yeah, those came out the other day. I wish they would come out with those a little bit earlier, because I would do an entire pod on the talent composite rankings, and we'll be definitely referencing those at various points during the season. All right, well, lock of the week, Iowa, 22.5 point favorite against Illinois State. I'm a sicko for doing this.
Look offense, can't be worse.
I have 4 best friends in this world. 2 went to Iowa, 2 went to Illinois State. I can all but guarantee you that the 2 Illinois State buddies, they have zero clue that they are opening the season against Iowa. That will be news to them, and maybe they'll get a text from someone of like, oh, hey, it's a 7-0 game, third quarter.
What's the mascot there at Illinois State? I could just ask you.
Redbirds. Yeah. Good old Redbirds had many a fun weekend at Illinois State. Good old Normal, Illinois. Certain
Oh,
State
talking about
Farm.
Blono? Some Blono talk?
Yeah,
How about that?
we do.
Hayden Thorne, stand up. Okay. He's from
Not
Naperville.
He's from Naperville, which is not Illinois State. Not
You're
Illinois
right.
State. The state of Illinois, he is technically from, but not Illinois State. Yeah, different.
I got ahead of my skis with the Blono talk there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's okay. I appreciate the swing. The swing was there. It very much was. The new Iowa offense will get to 28 points in this football game. Mark it down. Tim Lester comes out firing. He is replacing nepotism. 3 Iowa offensive touchdowns. Cade McNamara quiets all of this noise about his bad scrimmage numbers as seemingly the only player in all of college football who probably saw his stock drop in fall camp, a next to impossible task that he somehow accomplished. Although at the same time, it's like your coach is suspended for the first week because he tampered to be able to get you. So I think that at least stock up a little bit for that. That shows you're kind of worth it. Will, do you know how many times that Iowa scored 3 offensive touchdowns in a game last year?
I don't think I watched any of them. No.
2.
There you go.
Yep. Last time it happened was against Western Michigan, week 3 of last season. So a little bit of a drought. In case you haven't heard, trying to overcome that. Go figure that's where Tim Lester coached, but he was not coaching there last year.
So
he was
they scored those 2 of their first 3 weeks then, if their last one was
correct.
Week 3.
Correct. Yes.
Cool.
Utah State and Western Michigan were the 2 teams that allowed 3 offensive touchdowns to Iowa. More importantly, Kirk Ferentz being suspended for tampering to get Cade McNamara. You think McNamara is going to want to show why his coach was right to tamper to get him? I think he's going to be like, hey, coach, I got this, fam. We're good. And he's just going to come out slinging the pill.
I missed this storyline. I'll just be honest. You're telling me Kirk Ferentz is suspended?
Oh, you missed this?
Recruiting Cade McNamara. And you just watched Alabama go get Caden Proctor back out of the portal from them. It's so funny.
I know. It's peak college football. It really. Yep. My guy Ben Stevens had like the best tweet about it. It was like when Ron Swanson realizes like what cookies are on his computer and like how they save your personal information. Yeah. He takes the computer, he throws it into the dumpster. That was Kirk Ferentz using the portal. That's basically what happened with this. But think about this. Brian Ferentz is now an offensive analyst at Maryland, which is just a sentence that I can barely say with a straight face.
Yep.
I'm convinced it's a move that Mike Locksley made just so that he can have all the intel on things that didn't work against Big Ten West defenses, and he's just one play.
Hey Brian, that's all. What do you do here? All right, that was the opposite of that. Good. Yeah. All right, great answer. Keep it coming.
Awesome. This didn't work. Okay, perfect. You are providing value to our program. Mm-hmm. I don't think analysts are required to be at games, even though they're allowed to be on the sidelines now because the NCAA basically just gave up on enforcing that.
And I want everything.
Yeah, and everything except for tampering to get Cade McNamara. Even though that was
they should be thanking him for doing, by the way. Anyway,
they really should. I want Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz, sitting in a basement in one of the Ferentz households in Iowa City, 2 TV setup, Iowa on one screen, Maryland on the other. They're playing at the same time, so it's going to be a little bit difficult. 11 a.m. local time. Maybe some Triscuits on the table. Little ginger ale sitting on.
Oh, you got him nailed. That sounds like him.
Ginger ale on the coasters. One's off the coaster. Brian's is definitely off the coaster. Who are we kidding? Mm-hmm. A few random peanut shells kind of sitting on the table, just scattered. Like, somebody will clean that up. We're not going to get to that. If that scene exists, the Ferentz family owes it to us in the college football world, just the world as a whole, so that we can now, as consumers of content on the internet, have a caption contest for the rest of the day. That's all I ask. I don't care. Like, okay, if I get lock of the week wrong, whatever. I started off 0-3 last year. We got on a roll. I get picks wrong. It happens. I don't need Iowa to necessarily cover 22.5 against Illinois State. I need the Ferentz boys hanging. Just guys being dudes, opening weekend of college football season, the most unappetizing snacks ever on the table.
It's like just the opposite of the Manning cast. It's just like 2 guys destroying, like being football terrorists and being like, long past there. Shouldn't have done that.
Maybe they're talking on Skype or something like that if they can't get the in-person setup, and it's not Zoom. They're talking on Skype.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Love that.
So, yeah, that's my lock of the week. All right, well, let's kick to Marty Smith. Great to catch up with him. About a year ago that we had him on last. It was one of my favorite conversations that I've had. with a guest during the 7 years that I've been doing this show. So once again, here's Marty. I'm now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is Marty Smith. Marty, I've got a lot that I want to get to with you, but you're here today with GameChange, which is a competitive giving tool specifically for college athletes. It just launched this past Saturday. Tell everyone why you wanted to get involved with this and why this is unique.
First of all, Connor, thank you for your time, brother. I'm grateful to get to spend this time with you. And yes, I'm grateful to partner with GameChange. And the reason is in this NIL era, a lot of fans are trying to figure out, okay, how can we give to our university so they remain competitive? Not all of us have millions of dollars to get our names on buildings. And GameChange is a way to do it. You just go to GoGameChange.com. You input your credit or debit card of choice, choose your team, and then I'm sure you've been to the grocery store and they ask you, do you want to round up? A lot of different charities are benefit from those roundup programs. That's exactly what this is, only the money goes directly to your chosen athletic department. It goes right to the athletic department, and then the athletic department chooses how that money is distributed within the department. And it is a tax write-off. It is a charitable donation to your university of choice. And I just think it's so cool. I'm grateful to partner with them. And as somebody who, look, the schools that you and I spend a lot of time around in the SEC, most of them are doing okay financially. Basically, they have television revenue, massive television revenue coming into the athletic departments. But I went to Radford University, all right, very low Division I Big South Conference. And I wonder, I went to the Big South Conference tournament last year, and I'm like, how are we going to compete? How are we going to stay competitive and keep athletes in the door? Because NIL has made its way all the way into D2 for sure. I know that. And so this is just a unique way where any fan can input their credit card or debit card into GoGameChange.com, choose your school, and every single purchase with that specific card is directly going to that university's athletic department. I think it's a really cool initiative. And it's like, okay, do I want to partner with them? And then the more I learned about it, I was like, absolutely. I just think it's cool.
Yeah, it's different than just giving to a collective, so to speak. There's different tentacles to it, and the way that it works universally, I think, is something that's really easy to get on board with, and it's cool to see the innovations of NIL. As much as everyone wants to talk about why it's hurting sports, this is something that can greatly benefit. And for a school like yours, like Radford, I mean,
I'm telling you.
that's awesome.
I was worried, man. As I watched the Big South Conference tournament last year, I walk into High Point University, has a brand new arena, Cubane Arena. It is a gorgeous arena, 6 figures plus. They have a beautiful hotel attached to it, all that. And I'm sitting there looking around going, all right, this is High Point University. This is in the Big South Conference. This is what we're competing against at Radford University. We got to do something, and we got to do it now. And as I started to really process what GameChange is, I went, okay, this is a way for alumni all over the place to have a charitable opportunity that goes to the athletic department. And then they choose where the money's going. It might go to women's tennis. It might go to basketball. It might go to baseball, softball, whatever, volleyball. That's up to them. That's their discretion. But ultimately, it is great that the money goes directly to the athletic department. And again, a lot of people want write-offs.
Very true. Very, very true. So the last time you were on, I really appreciated getting to chat about our late fathers and what that grieving process was like, and kind of, the different things that you go through. And your conversation with Lane Kiffin about his late dad, Monty, and the timing of when you had it, obviously I think it was like a week after the death of his father. That conversation made the rounds. Everyone go watch it if you haven't. The 7-minute clip that you posted, I'm sure, was just like a fraction of a much longer conversation with Lane about his dad. But you start by asking him about the influence that his dad had on him. And with it's so removed, like Lane is basically says, like, I don't really want to go there. I'm going to get too emotional. You can tell he's still trying to like process everything. But Lane went there. Take us behind the scenes with all that, because if you had just chimed in after Lane had said, I don't really want to go there, and said, like, all right, let's talk about your portal editions or something, you never really see that conversation happen.
It was a very interesting moment, to be honest with you, Connor, because I having lost my dad, to your point, and knowing his overwhelming influence in my journey and who I am as a person, both good and bad. I I know that dynamic really well, and I know that 16 years after losing him, I still learn about him every day and learn about how he shaped my perspectives and how my personality traits in certain ways are a direct derivative of his and my mom's too, but certainly my dad's influence. And so for somebody like Lane, who is such a dynamic personality, hilarious on social media, who's evolved so much himself and made decisions in his personal life and in that affected his professional life. First and foremost, the decision to get sober a few years ago, along with his quarterback Matt Corral and what that meant for them as people. I chronicled that in pretty great depth in my book Sideline CEO, and the mental clarity and the bond that it gave those two. What a decision on Lane's part. And having met his dad a couple times, I didn't know Monty well, but I knew his grace. And so I just wanted to know Lane's perspective on it. And it was very fresh. His father had just passed when we sat with him in July in Dallas. And to see his facial expression, to see his body language and his energy, that he said, I'm not capable of doing that right now because I can't maintain my emotional composure. And then I was, of course, totally, okay. I'm sorry. I don't want to pry. Nothing else was said. He just started talking. And as he started talking and saying, I'm not 10% of the man that my father was, I never will be. And then to see him detail the influence that Monty had on so many men and women, support staff, training staff, janitorial staff, or custodial staff, all the way up to the top presidents, chancellors. And to have that kind of grace and that kind of influence is the greatest endorsement that you can have and the greatest influence you can have. And to see Lane's vulnerability in that moment was something I've never experienced. And I've had wonderful personal moments, conversations with Lane off camera, away, no tape recorders, no nothing. And that was as moving and as impactful for me as any conversation I've ever had. And I'm so grateful to him because I texted him that night and I said, you don't know what you just did. You don't know the influence that your vulnerability is going to have on millions of people. And I think now he probably does, now that it's aired. The conversation was 20-something minutes in total. You guys saw 7. And all 20 of those were just beyond anything I've seen from him. And so full of gratitude for him. So is Ryan McGee, my brother, my co-host, who also was involved and immersed in that energy. We spend a lot of time, brother. You guys, I said to you before we came on, I love what you guys do at Saturday Down South. I love the content. I love the immersion. You know that we spend a lot of time talking about the dynamics on a day-to-day basis. We don't spend a lot of time talking about the broader scope of what these coaching staffs and these athletic departments are trying to do for young people. And that's genuinely prepare them for life and grow them as individuals. And it's obvious to me that Lane is in a season of his life where that matters the most. Of course, winning matters. It's you're either employed or you ain't, and winning is the why and the how. And he's doing a very good job at that too. But his relationships with Matt Corral, with Jackson Dart, that relationship with Matt Corral is why Jackson chose Ole Miss. He told me that himself. And so it was just a really fulfilling moment for me. Sorry for rambling forever and on and on and on.
No, that was the exact answer I hoped you would provide, because I think we all get in those settings at media days, and I've seen the behind the scenes, even with you guys, like with your set specifically. You have a very specific window with these head coaches. I'm pretty sure Lane was off his schedule for the rest of the day as a direct result of that. Like, he went on Feinbaum late and stuff like that. But that speaks to him wanting to be vulnerable in that moment, and him wanting to be able to share that with people who very clearly were there to listen to it. And at different points in Lane's career, I think we all questioned whether or not he had emotional maturity. And I think it's been a fair criticism of who he's been. And so now, one of the burning questions in all of college football this year for me is Lane ready for all of this? Because it's the preseason expectations that are, like 2012 USC, maybe not quite that same level because it's not the number one team in the country, but dealing with, the death of your father and this team that is ready to take this next step in this new era of the sport that you've embraced. Like, is he ready for all of this? And that is such a fascinating question. Do you feel like you have a better perspective and feel like you have an answer to that question? Because obviously we won't know until we see it, but seeing what you've seen from him, do you feel like he's now ready to conquer this in a way that he wasn't maybe as recently as like 2 or 3 years ago?
Absolutely. In terms of where he was a couple years ago compared to where he is now, it's been quite an evolution. As a person, he's learned to go inward. He's started to be very analytical in his spiritual self. And I'm in a season of my life where I'm doing the same thing, so it's very relatable to me. There's so much outside noise. There's so many inputs coming at us all the time, and we can let those inputs define us as people. Or we can take the time to go inward, really self-analyze, because we can't lie to ourselves. We can put on fronts for everybody out there. But when we're in the mirror, when we're looking at, one of the greatest, you're a country music guy, one of the greatest, maybe the greatest, this is a hell of a statement, but maybe the greatest stanza of any song that I have ever heard is, "The truth about a mirror is that a damned old mirror don't really tell the whole truth. It don't show what's deep inside or read between the lines, and it's really no reflection of my youth." That's from Troubadour by George Strait. And you listen to what that says and you go, holy cow, like, I can be something out here. I try very hard in my life, Connor. I don't always succeed. I try to be the same guy all the time, but I'm not. I want to be. I want my children to know the same guy that they see on the TV in their daily walk. I want to influence them. People that are watching TV the same way I do my children, but guess what? You can't, because not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's going to appreciate who that person is. But if it's your authentic self, that energy that you're putting out, you have to be okay with whatever comes back because it's real. And I believe that's where Lane Kiffin is. He is putting this version of self out there that is unencumbered. Like, he went from us he went to your point. He goes from having that conversation with with Ryan and me to Feinbaum, and he's busting Feinbaum's ass.
Yeah.
And I love that versatility because it's real. And so I would venture to say that he's as empowered personally as he's ever been. And he also has a ton of talent if you don't have talent, but that dude's got a lot of talent, man. He's obviously tweaked. The Quinshon Judkins went to Ohio State. Like, he's tweaked. You can see it in his tweets, whatever they're called, X's. What the hell do we call them now, bro?
Call them tweets.
I'm a tweet. I'm old. It's a tweet. Yeah. So you can tell that he is poking the bear that he chose to go there. But he too has a lot of players from the portal and good ones. So yeah, there's a lot of expectation, and there should be. And I do believe he's equipped.
Let's talk about another piece that you did. This is going to be coming out mid-season. You got a chance to tell Scott Cochran's story and his battle with addiction during his time. Most recently at Georgia. Of course, he was at Alabama for a long time, and now he's not in college football this year. And that's going to be a conversation that a lot of people, I'm sure, will be talking about. Somebody that's become a household name in SEC circles. What did you take away from that?
So much, and I can't wait for the college game day and college football on ESPN viewing public to see it. I've known Scott for a long time. We're generally close, and to see this person share that journey and the depths of that journey and what it ultimately meant for his life, for his personal life, for his professional life, for his own insecurities, for what his new drive is and his new goals are. I was moved emotionally, personally, to a tremendous degree, and I just can't wait for you guys to see it. It's scheduled to air during the Georgia-Bama week. It's week 5 on College Game Day, and the interviews were extremely vulnerable. They were very emotional, and so Scott's journey through opioid addiction. I've watched a lot of things on Netflix. There are many shows that really show in great detail what that can be. There's a book I read, and I actually suggested this book to Scott after our interview was over. There's a book by a lady named Barbara Kingsolver called Demon Copperhead. If you haven't read it, I highly, highly suggest. You want a Pulitzer Prize. I mean, that's all you need to know. But the reason that it impacted me so deeply was it's set in the region in which I grew up. It's set in the Southwest Virginia, East Tennessee, East Kentucky region of Appalachia, which is right in that corridor where opioids really had a dramatic effect, still are. And she did a beautiful job, Miss Kingsolver did, she lives there, and that's why she nailed the spirit of the region. And then I go and sit down with Scott, Sissy, his wife, and learn about how that unfolded. I just don't want to get, it's weird when it hasn't aired yet.
Yeah.
You don't want to give too much away, but I appreciate you asking. I will just say this. Those of you who see it, and I hope that's millions of you, and share it, will have impacts on people who are living in the darkness. Because Scott hid it for a really, really long time. And in a lot of cases, that was including his own family for a long time. So I look forward to y'all seeing it, brother. Thank you for asking about it, because it really matters deeply to me to nail that piece.
Because I'm sure it's not like you're reaching out to him being like, Scott, I hear you're going through a really tough time in your life.
About it.
Yeah.
It is now his purpose. I say all the time, brother, ESPN ain't my purpose. ESPN is a platform for my purpose. And it's a platform for which I have gratitude that I can't even describe. I see that from Scott now. He has 8 national championship rings, bro. 8. 1 at LSU, 5 at Bama, and 2 at Georgia. And I believe, based on what I've seen, that he believes those are now a platform for his purpose, and that's saving lives. And so I will tell you, in the aftermath, when I drove home from Athens after doing the interviews with Scott and his wife, I was emotionally exhausted.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be on the lookout for that. I'm sure that is going to be must-see TV. Cannot wait to be able to see that full conversation. Speaking of ESPN, you talk about your purpose, co-workers, I guess, so to speak. Nick Saban's your new coworker, which
weird,
is
man.
It's so like you probably had like you're one, and obviously like people that are on the beat, they talk to him all the time. But in terms of national people, like you've talked to Saban about as much as anyone. How weird is it to see him on that side? Because even seeing him on game day and he's admitting, oh yeah, the prediction stuff and all that, I didn't necessarily take into account like how tough that was. And now I'm seeing this new perspective and like even Saban himself is evolving. Like, have you had any interactions with him as a colleague yet?
I have at SEC Media Days, and I'll tell you, just as an aside, I'm in my bar in my basement of my home, and I came down here on Saturday morning, and I had poured myself a cup of coffee upstairs, and I walked downstairs and I turned on my TV, and I'm sitting here on my couch. I opened up the doors. I have these sliding glass doors that open up to Lake Norman out here. Okay, the beautiful air is coming in. The air feels a little crisp,
What a scene.
and college game day comes on, and I'm watching my friends. I want you to know too, all of you guys watching or listening, that Reese and Kirk and Dez and Pat and all those folks, Jess and Jen and everybody involved, Jimmy Galliero, the producer, everybody involved, are great friends. And so I sit down and I turn on the TV and they're on, and Reese is delivering his live from Ireland beautiful soliloquy open with the gorgeous images of the cliffs of Moher and whatever else they're shooting there. And I'm sitting there sipping my coffee going, damn, this is pretty. This is how people get up on Saturday mornings. This is pretty good. And then Coach, they show Coach, and he was so honest in his assessment of, I am now everything that I hated.
Yeah.
I thought it was the coolest thing because, you think about the kind of, I almost said an anatomical term. You think about the guts that it takes, all right, and the self-confidence that it takes to say that on that international television, that I admittedly am now doing these things that for 40 years I hated, more than 40 years, but it's who I am now. And then I loved that he leaned on his analysis. I've not talked to him since college game day, but I have been around him enough to know that mindset very well. I mean, I was somebody that received a lot of eye rolls over the years when I would go down to Tuscaloosa and say, Coach, where do you think your team sizes up in the overall scope of the SEC? And he gives me that we don't have goal sheet. We don't care about, the whole thing. And so when we were at SEC Media Days, I had the neatest conversation with him. Is neatest the dweebiest word ever? Sorry.
No, it was like that place.
It was like the coolest thing. So let me paint another picture for you. I'm sitting in the makeup chair. All right. And Lindsay and Emily, our amazingly talented makeup and hair staff, are fixing me up there. I call them my pit crew. And I decide I'm going to take a video. I put this on my Instagram. And I'm doing a video, and I'm like going to show them doing their thing. And I see in the background Nick Saban walking towards me on my selfie video. And he walks over and he's like, hey, man. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, I turned it off as fast as I could because I didn't want to put him in a bad spot. But guess what he asked me? So
how do you get your makeup done? Was it a makeup question? Okay.
It was not a makeup question. He'd already had his done. He'd already been on Sports Center that morning. So he sat down with me and we had a cup of coffee together. And he was all enthralled with, how do you formulate questions? And man, I want to be able to, because the previous day, Ryan McGee and I had done a 30 or 40-minute interview with Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, and Coach Saban together about the state of collegiate athletics. Because I don't believe there are two more informed authority voices and minds on that than those two. And he didn't know yet, like, if Greg Sankey says something, can I just, I want to talk right now. I want to say this. And that's, of course, what we wanted him to do. But he was not comfortable yet. And I said to him, I said, mark my words right now. Mark, listen to me. Mark my words. I actually got to say, listen to me, to Nick Saban. By the 1st of October, you are going to be so comfortable on the College Game Day set that that's what you're going to do. And I want you to listen. That's what your producers, the viewing audience, and your colleagues want you to do, because you're the smartest mind in the entire world about what's about to come out of your mouth. And he didn't say this to me. Gosh, I wish he had it, because, boy, I'd have walked around with a big old fat head all day long. But my hope is that my 20 years in the business at ESPN might have in some small way empowered him. Maybe. That probably sounds so egotistical. I don't mean.
No, it's true. I think it's fair.
It was cool for me that he respected our time together in that setting to just inquire. And damn, it was a cool moment for me. And I haven't had the time to tell him that yet. I did thank him at the time, but like, I've really tried to, again, going inward, tried to process, wow, what an opportunity that the greatest of all time sought a little bit of affirmation in that moment from a guy that, he was busting his chops for the last fit. Because I think I've probably been going to Tuscaloosa very regularly for at least a decade. And so just a cool moment for me, man.
Yeah, outside of Miss Terry, his coaching staff, like, how many people has he actually like sought advice? Like, even Jimmy Sexton. I mean, he's probably telling Jimmy, like, hey, this is how things are going to go.
Well, I'm sure he's doing that from everybody on the College Game Day. So I saw him doing it with Laura Rutledge, because he was going to be doing segments with Laura during the day on SEC Network and throughout the college football platforms. And I mean, he would sit with Laura and go through the entire, because he wants to know. He wants to be prepared. He doesn't want to be surprised. Tell me what you know. Tell me what you don't know. Never let me be surprised. Nick Saban edicts right there, buddy. And
truly is.
Someday I hope he lets me write his book, Coach.
Be a good one. I'd read that.
He'll have somebody who's like Pulitzer Prize winner do it. But
New York Times
he's the best.
Just
yes, but I don't think that impresses Coach very much.
Yeah. Marty, let me get you out of here with this last one. You've been everywhere this week. You're with Kirby on Tuesday or Monday. I mean, you've had conversations with Billy Napier. You were at LSU talking to Brian Kelly. You've been all over the place. What's a takeaway you've had from these conversations going into week one, without necessarily revealing, you're not revealing any sort of, injury news or anything like that, but something that you found interesting that you're going to be thinking about this weekend?
All three of those men specifically really like the teams they're putting on the field. And as you know, this year is vital for Billy. This Saturday is vital for Billy. But he loves Graham Mertz as quarterback. There's been a complete culture shift there. And I'm speaking directly to Gator fans right now. I have several really passionate Florida Gator fans who are like, man, why do you keep telling us this guy's the guy? I believe you're going to see it this year, because they're going to have competitive stamina, talent, unity that they haven't had during the Billy Napier tenure so far. Like, he had to turn an entire culture during NIL, complete roster changeover. And he now has guys that chose Florida and that Florida chose. And so it's interesting, but I had a great conversation with him. McGee and I will flush that out much more on Saturday while we're down in Gainesville. Brian Kelly, of course, Grant Nussmeier now takes over behind center for Jaden Daniels. He knows they now have Blake Baker, who's leading that defense. That is huge, because they couldn't stop a nosebleed in 2023. And if they could have, they might have been a national title contender. They had the best offense in America and a Heisman Trophy winner and 2 wide receivers, 3, that were really good players and will be good players at the next level. Offensive lines back. They got Will Campbell, who's going to be a top 2 or 3 pick in the NFL draft coming up. They got dudes. So he's very bullish. And, Kirby, it's funny. Kirby tries to tell me that, no, we don't use what happened in the SEC championship game last year as motivation. We don't. We start over anew every year. Bull. They may not want to, but I had a 30-minute sit-down interview with Carson Beck, and it was great. Great. And I was asking him about what was the aftermath like of that Alabama loss. And he just detailed the pin drop, desolate quiet of the locker room and the hallway outside the media room right before those guys went in to address the media. And when they detailed that, their jaws were clenched. So don't tell me they don't remember it. And I think Georgia wants a reckoning. That's what I think.
Georgia win it all this year? You on record with that?
I think it's going to be them and Ohio State. And of course, that is, as we sit here right now, injury-free, feeling good and healthy, obviously, all that. It's like, again, going back to Coach Saban, prognostication, I'm not good at it, first of all. I'm terrible at it, but I just really suck at choosing who's going to win what. But, yes, I think that Georgia is the team to beat nationally. With that said, I've gone on record with my conference champions. You ready for this?
Fire away.
Georgia, number 1 seed. Ohio State, out of the Big Ten, number 2 seed. A lot of people like Oregon. Clemson, number 3 seed in the ACC. And are you ready, my friends?
Oh, I know what's coming.
The West Virginia Mountaineers out of the Big 12. Most people love Utah. Totally see why. Cam Rising is back. I love the toughness that Kyle Whittingham has instilled in that program. Love him as a person, too. But, man, Garrett Green behind center. If you don't know that name, you better remember that name. That's a Tallahassee kid. He was the scuttlebutt coming out of the Manning Passing Academy. And so I don't know. We can't just do chalk all the time, right?
That's boring. It is.
It's boring. Let's take a chance or two, man. Go Mountaineers.
Love it. Marty, you're the best. On behalf of GameChange, sounds really cool, like an awesome initiative that you're involved with. I know you got a billion places you got to be, but appreciate you making the time, and we'll do this again real soon.
Always appreciate spending time with you and your spirit, brother. I feel like we're very like-minded people, and I appreciate how you do what you do and the person you are. Have a great day. Thank you,
man. Thank you, man. You too. Well, let's close with some lad of the week. I teased it before. You want me to start? Do we have the same lad of the week?
No, I got an interesting one. I got a random one. Go ahead.
Okay, I love random lad of the weeks. Ray Gunn's going to be tough to top. It really is. But Georgia Tech coach Brent Key, obvious choice here. Run the ball. I love how he said that. Like he for whatever reason tapped into his Powell and I don't know why it came out that way, but I'm so glad that it did. It was perfect post-game interview material. I don't know why Katie George is always there for the great opening weekend post-game interviews. Like we'll get her back on the show sometime soon here, but she's always there. She was there for the execution comment for Brian Kelly a couple of years ago. Yep. It was like, how is she just at the center of these moments? To her credit, the question was set up very well for him to be able to answer. Like, as a former offensive lineman, like watching the way that you guys won this game, I'm sure that had to mean a lot to you. And like for Georgia Tech to win in that fashion against a top 10 team, which by the way, Georgia Tech had beat a top 10 team since the weird missed field goal return against Florida State 2015.
Yep.
So think about that. Georgia Tech just always finds a way to somehow beat Florida ACC teams in the most bizarre fashion possible. Yeah, why is that? I don't know.
Every Georgia Tech win is just the strangest thing I've ever seen, isn't it? Like it's just over. It's timeless.
It really is. It really is. And who knows? Maybe this is the beginning of kind of this rise for Georgia Tech. It certainly felt like a big moment for that program. Great to see Haynes King and Key kind of chopping it up afterwards. but Key is thriving with his first opportunity as a head coach. And look, everybody knows I'm a big Jeff Collins guy. Jeff Collins guy through and through. It's hard not to be impressed with what Brent Key is doing at Georgia Tech. In a year in which the ACC could be a bit all over the place, and week to week, we're kind of like, who's going to win? Remember like a couple years ago where we were just debating who's the best team in the SEC West. That might be the case for the entire 18-team ACC this year. It very well could be. But yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this too, and I hate that my mind goes here. I don't like that it goes here because I would love nothing more than for Brent Key to just have a great life, coach Georgia Tech for the next decade, make a bunch of money, win a bunch of football games, have Georgia Tech win a bunch of games, whatever. Like, have a good life. But even though he's doing this at his alma mater, Will, is there a possibility that someone with his background, who has really spent his entire career coaching in the SEC footprint, 10 years at UCF, by the way, as well.
I was about to say, that's a UCF legend to me, brother.
He is. George O'Leary, shout out.
Yeah.
Could he be a Florida candidate if that job opens up? Could he be one to keep in mind? Because that's kind of the smash mouth they need a little bit, that they thought they were getting with Billy, and it's been a little bit up and down in that regard. And the success that I think he's had playing against Georgia, playing more competitively against Georgia than what maybe the final score has indicated. I'm just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind for Florida.
Yeah, no, I think they have just a crazy record against like ranked ACC teams, and it's so cool to see a program that it felt like they were delaying the inevitable, right? They had like the triple option, and it was just, because the academic standards and like the type of athlete they were getting, and it just felt like this program was just sinking into Lake Lanier, is the best way I could describe it. Like it was just being like, you guys will never be good again. It was like, actually, we have a guy who is just so old football coach coded that he's just going to run counter like 30 times, and MSU's just not used to seeing that much counter. Surely they won't counter again here, right? Because like they just like my boy Max Toscano like had this like kind of keyed early. He's like, they haven't made a decision how they're going to cover this counter, so it's just going to keep happening because the ends are literally reading it differently every time. And so they're like, well, if we want an that reads it this way, we're going to go this way. If we want an that reads it that way, we're going to go that way. So yeah, it was beautiful to watch, and to cut to their offensive coordinator, who just looked like 3-year Letterman in a disguise. And it was just like, these guys are just running the dang ball, huh?
What a concept. What a concept. I love seeing that every once in a while. Tough to do that week in, week out and have the advantage. You got to find different ways to be able to scheme. But I love it when a coach just realizes, you ain't stopping this, and I know you ain't stopping this. And I don't care if we're boring, it's going to work, and got it done. Big time win.
My lad of the week, and this is fitting for Ireland, right? We're talking about lads. My lad of the week is footballers, right? Now, footy players, right? So this game of football, right? The forward pass really changed it for Americans, right? But we went to Ireland and we found our roots, right? Starting, of course, with David Shanahan, Georgia Tech's punter. Now, didn't see the field a ton, 2 times, but he was able to return to his homeland. He's from Castle Island of Ireland. It's something that I can't pronounce. I apologize. Do you have any idea how to pronounce this?
But it's beautiful. Saw the college game day feature. Jen Latta, like, good work.
Castle Island. That's the most Irish place I've ever heard. I can't even pronounce it. And so David Shanahan looks like a FIFA player. He kind of has like that like look to him, like he's a businessman, like he's already like 25 years old, right? So cool to see him, right? We already talked about Ryan Fitzgerald, FSU's kicker, who honestly would have won player of the game. They hit 2 insane field goals. It's very funny that everybody was making excuses for DJ Uyunglele about, well, the plane ride, the jet lag, da-da-da-da. I don't know the amount of times I've seen a guy hit a 52 and a 59-yarder in the same game. That generational kicking performance is going to be completely overlooked by history, and it really shouldn't be because, goodness, this dude almost single-handedly saved his team, and it just didn't matter. And, of course, he's from Coolidge, Georgia, right? And then this is the most recent time, I can't remember the most recent time I've seen a college football player who looked like a college student. But when I saw Aiden Burr, not like the founding father, but Birr, who hit the winning field goal for Georgia Tech, I was like, this guy looks like he's in a 101 class. This guy looks like he is at Georgia Tech to go to class. He does not look 6'4". He does not look like Shanahan, who looks 26. He looks like he just stepped off the plane and is excited to be here. He looked like SpongeBob. I was watching him warm up, and I went, oh my goodness, after Georgia Tech took that like one bad fumble where it like lost him like 18 yards or 16 yards. And I went, oh my gosh, this poor kid's going to miss this kick, because he had already missed a kick in this game. And lo and behold, he ended up being the hero for Georgia Tech. And like just watching him, I mean, it was just such a time capsule of a moment, watching Georgia Tech, run the ball like we talked about, run these counters, and then watching a kid who looked like he was from like Friday Night Lights from Texas just be like, well, ma'am, I'm just so happy to be here. And it was just like, man, this is why I fell in love with college football. You could put it in Ireland. You can make it a weird conference game between FSU and GT, who at least are legacy members of the ACC. But yeah, it was just interesting to think, hey, in Ireland, the legs really did come through. Like, it really did turn into an old school football game where not a ton of forward passes. Haynes King for a long time, you hanging on to that Haynes King stock is like Bitcoin in 2012, buddy.
Hell yeah.
That thing is going straight to the moon. It might take a couple of years, couple of presidential administrations maybe, but it'll get there. All right. So that's the thing. Footballers are my lads of the week, literally.
I love it. That's great. Yeah. Look, I understand there's pushback of some of these international games. I think they're cool. I really do. And obviously I'm biased. I took a trip to Dublin for our honeymoon. Mm-hmm. Absolutely loved it there. Great environment. Like, I mean, to be able to like walk the streets of Dublin is just such a surreal, cool thing. And just the overall vibe with going into authentic pubs there and feeling like you are truly immersed and in their culture is such a fun thing to do. And like seeing
Connor, when you're in Ireland, do you introduce yourself as Connor O'Gara?
Why would I pronounce my last name wrong?
More Irish? I don't know. Just trying to be like, hey, this is my homeland. I'm Connor O'Gara.
True story. They added the O apostrophe.
Yeah.
When we got to Ellis Island, my ancestors way back in the day. And for my mom's side of the family, my mom's maiden name is Byrne. And her original name was O'Byrne. And they took the O apostrophe off at Ellis Island. Mm-hmm. And my mom's family had a better life than my dad's family did, because the no Irish need apply. It hurt mm-hmm. my dad and his family. And like, I did that. I remember doing that for like a research paper in 6th grade or something like that. I was like, oh, that's like legitimately interesting family history mm-hmm. that I think is fascinating. So to answer your question in a weird way, no, did not do that. I certainly blended in. I definitely did. I looked the part. Then they heard me speak and like, you guys still got a little lingering effects of a Chicago accent. Like, you're not quite our people here, but yeah, really cool. Loved all the scenes, Cliffs of Moher, stuff like that. Ireland's like, I was talking to Barrett about this because Barrett got a very last minute opportunity to be able to go and cover the game. Our guy George Somerville was there. Shout out George, he's the man. Mm-hmm. And I was saying to Barrett, like, the cool thing about Dublin is that you don't have the language barrier. It's an 8-hour flight from us for us on the East Coast. Like, if you're flying out of Atlanta, it's only 8 hours. It's not that bad.
Okay, that's changing my life. Thank you for that information. Wow.
Aer Lingus, man. I'm just saying, you got to take the red eye, so it's like an overnight thing and all that stuff, and you got to adjust to the time change. But I think Dublin's such a cool place.
That makes me think of when Michael Rappaport watched Kristaps Porzingis get drafted, and he was like, "Who is this? Hingus Pingus?" Like, I thought Aer Lingus was made up. That's a real thing.
No, it's a real airport. Yeah, if you were going to the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the travel accommodations are pretty favorable, I think, for Americans, and not having to deal with the language barrier is a big thing. So yeah, I enjoyed week 0. It was great. Glad that week 1 is here. Week 1 on American soil. No, I'm just kidding. But I am looking forward to a full weekend, man. It's going to be mm-hmm. so great. I'm going to get a little sentimental for just a second here. It's my 10th season with this company, Will. 10.
Wow.
Yeah, year 10. This is not something that I thought I'd be talking about. Honestly, like, when I signed up to do this job, did not think I'd be here for 10 seasons. And here we are. And I'm here because I love doing this, and I love being able to talk about this wild, crazy sport. Love being able to write about it. I look forward to these midweek pods that we do, previewing games so much. Like, I woke up today so tired because we're dealing right now with like weaning and stuff like that. So you're up in the middle of the night and doing all that. And I woke up, and then I remembered instantly, like, oh yeah, I get to put together a preview pod. We can mm-hmm. talk about actual games this week. And I was fired up. I was ready to go. and I'm very appreciative of all of you who have stuck with us through different iterations of this podcast, who are listening year round. Even if you're only listening seasonally, it means a lot, and I'm extremely grateful to be here for now. 10 seasons this will be. So we're going to do a lot of fun stuff during the season. We have a great time doing this. If you're new, subscribe, please do, because we work extremely hard, but we love it. And guys, we're here. We made it. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's funny. I was actually we had a college student at our workplace today, and he talked to me, he booked some time with me, and I was talking to him. I was like, hey, if you want to work in sports, your first several years are going to be hard. I was like, you're going to watch, your friends make more money than you and get these titles and all this other stuff. And I was like, but at the end of the day, and people are going to tell you you're crazy and that your dreams don't make any sense. I was like, I remember people telling me that 10 years ago when I started working for SDS. I was like, I'm still, I'm just co-hosting their podcast now, or, on-air producing, or whatever we call it. And the fact, the cool times we've had, the relationships we've had, this company taking a chance on us has been super duper cool. And those memories, dude from Chicago, guy from, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, put us talking about something we both love. And I look forward to it multiple times a week. That's why, we both moved heaven and earth to make it work. So yeah, man, I mean, this is what a fitting way, right? Year 10 for us, and first of the new Wild West in college football that, every week is going to be the craziest week ever, because people are not going to know how to react to all these losses. And I'm just this is the most excited I've been for a college football season probably since 2019 with Burrow coming back, and maybe even more so. And LSU will not be as good this year as they were in 2019, so it's a little bit harder. It's a little bit more neutral.
But what if they are? Will, what if they are? You never know. Hope springs eternal. It's still talking season for a couple more days.
There you go.
If you have not, please leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at Sat Down South, at TJ Guerra, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.